Good morning. The June 18th, 2024 board work session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Trent? Here. Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Susan?
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right, board. Dr. Rendell, I'm going to turn it over to you just so that you're able to address the board with the items that are on the agenda for today, because we have a bit of a hefty agenda. So if you don't mind filling everyone in. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we have a lot of information to cover today, and want to orient you to the agenda. The first thing is we're going to get a 5-year look ahead to the career and technical education programs at our high schools, current programs, and some things we're considering in the future, so we'll get your input on that. Then we're also going to look at some preliminary student achievement data. It's really, really good news. We really want to share with you the good news. None of it is official, so when we're presenting that later today, we're going to keep talking about it's not official, it's not official. It's really good news. Our teachers and our students did a lot of good things in the classroom this year, so we want to share it with you. And then we'll just say, remember, it's just preliminary. Then we're also going to look at our final year-end data for discipline, for student misbehavior, consequences, and that kind of thing. The board and the public may recall that each quarter we take a look at the data to see how we're doing. So now we have final year-end data, so we can compare it to last year, trends, that kind of thing. So we're going to share that information with you. We were also going to take a look at our Youth Truth Survey data. That's a lot of information. It's probably a 2-hour presentation of its own. So we're going to punt that to the next board meeting, but we didn't want to pull that off the agenda until we explained why. So do that. Then we have some policy revisions on professional learning to look at, and then you have the board attorney's review. So a lot of stuff today, so we're going to get to it as soon as we can, but appreciate the patience.
Thank you. We have an exciting lineup today, board. All right, so the first topic on the agenda is the presentation for the CTE, the 5-year high school program plan, which Ms. Rachel Rutledge will be, I believe, leading that presentation. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Are we better? Okay, wonderful. All right, so in the 26-27 school year, we are looking at the Technical Agriculture Operations Program at Astronaut. This program involves small engine repair, drone usage, irrigation, ag machinery, and we have actually secured an equipment funding grant through the Workforce Capitalization Grant. So we have some funding already in place for the equipment that's going to be needed there. You may have heard recently there was a veto with the facilities appropriation that was put in, but we're pivoting at this point, and Mr. Lindeman and I are going to go take a look at it and see what we'll still be able to pull out as a win at the school, because the equipment piece is there. So while we're talking about ag, we have had some interesting advancement just in the ag conversation over the last bit. We have pulled together partners from our ag stakeholders groups that have come together and helped us define what specific skills we need in our community. We're not a traditional ag community, you know, in terms of the animals, but there are some skills that are needed with drone usage and such that could really help our ag community. We've been working with Happiness Horse Farm. We've actually gone on site to visit them. They're working on a program for students to participate in, and we'll help with the communications piece to get kids to those programs once it's established. We'll also be talking with Romelia Farms as well, so there will be something on both sides of the county for kids to participate in, from science to CTE, all over the place, programs that kids can participate in. So that is an overview of where we are with Astronaut. As we move forward to Bayside, we were awarded a workforce capitalization grant again for over $2 million, and part of what we're using these funds for is for an expansion of the machining program at Bayside. We already have a fabulous program, but we're continuing to refresh, reset, and get that ready for next steps for our students. We're also going to be hoping to add in the 27-28 school year an artificial intelligence program. And this looks specifically at the relationship between machines and human learning. And they already have an established AP computer science courses at Bayside, and they have a fabulous machining program. So I envision this as an academy that really supports the IT focus and the machines and the programming, all of those pieces together. As we continue to move, Brevard Virtual, I have had conversations with the principal at the school, and we're looking at what options we're going to be providing to Brevard Virtual next. We have 2 current full programs for CTE that are offered through Brevard Virtual. Those are hospitality and tourism and the principles of teaching. We're learning next week what full rollout programs are going to be available to Brevard Virtual for curriculum. So once we have those conversations, we're going to establish where we go next. We've also had conversations about OJT courses for the kids that are full-time at Brevard Virtual. So that'll be some next steps that are coming with that school. At Cocoa High School, we've had just a huge community engagement in the Cocoa area for public service careers. And so we are looking at replicating the firefighting program that we currently offer at Palm Bay to hit our mid to north end students. That is something that we've had just huge interest and success with. The kids are doing a fabulous job in the program, and we're working closely with Eastern Florida to provide them the opportunity for live burns when they graduate from high school. We're not burning anything on our school campuses, okay? But that will be done in a controlled environment with our students that want to go into this career field. At Cocoa Beach, we're constantly, and this isn't just at Cocoa Beach, but at all of our schools, we're constantly evaluating our programs to make sure we have the right programs in the right place. And so we are going to be looking at adding an additional program down the road in artificial intelligence again. So this would be something that would mirror what's going to be happening at Bayside. And again, we want to make sure that the student body has enough enrollment to support the program. So we're going to be looking at all of these to find the right fit for the community, for the school. And just a quick little update on the greenhouse for the aquaculture program. I was out there yesterday, and it is finally being erected even further. I'm really excited for it to be open at the start of the school year. We also have a floating classroom that's on the way for the program, which is pretty exciting. So students can actually go out and learn in the lagoon. So that's going to be, yes, it's going to be pretty exciting. We do have a new teacher that's there, and just really excited for what's happening with that program and looking down the road for how we can further impact students. Okay, at O'Galley, and board, I do apologize for this. We're actually putting the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University curriculum into the aviation program there, not into ROTC. So I do apologize for that error on this slide. But we've added a second teacher at O'Galley in the aviation program because it's just been growing. We're also setting up Johnson's middle school to do an Embry-Riddle exploratory aviation curriculum that'll feed to it, and so lots of exciting things happening here. We're going to be integrating some diesel technology into the automotive maintenance program. So we're looking at changing one of the bays to accommodate diesel equipment, which would also incorporate ag, and so that's coming down the road. You know, at O'Galley we have a lot of our skilled trades programs that are very present there, and this will be something new and unique. We're also going to be hoping to add the natural resources program as well, which is another agriculture program. It has a focus on environmental science, studying ecosystems, land use planning, sustainability, and droning. We've already secured an equipment grant, again, through workforce capitalization, so the equipment for both Astronaut and O'Galley have already been secured, which is nice. And then we have some facilities funds that are also available to edit the course there at O'Galley. At Edgewood, because nobody's being left behind on this one. I've been in conversations with our principal there, and all of these principals are aware of where we're headed and are part of the conversation. We are in the planning phase to find the right fit for this school. We have some specific ideas we've thrown out there, but we want to survey student body, find out where the interests are, and get an advisory group together to help us make the right decision at that school. These are our current offerings right now, but we are looking at something more high-tech in that area to bring into Edgewood. All right, at Heritage, the advanced manufacturing program is also being refreshed by the Workforce Capitalization Grant. We have some major equipment and facilities modifications that we're doing right now to get that program off the ground again. We have a new teacher that's very engaged in the process and is excited for what he's going to be able to bring to the table. And then in 2026, we are looking at bringing electricity, residential electricity. I know that the skilled trades, we have just a huge interest in those types of jobs in our community, and so we're responding to that. We've had partners that have reached out that want to be a part of these conversations as we build it from an apprenticeship standpoint, from our post-secondary partners that have that want to see the success of these types of programs in our schools. So we're going to be building this out in the near future, and I have some, again, Mr. Lindemann's going on a ride-along, or I'm going on a ride-along to really look at this and get some specific pieces in place. All right, we are also doing a major culinary arts remodel and upfit at Melbourne High School. It's starting with the exterior building, and then we're building out the interior facilities from that perspective, just to resemble our industry jobs for our students. Also, coming in 2027 is a VyStar on-campus credit union. So this is a business management and analysis program. So the kids are learning a little bit of HR, marketing, finance, and this company will come in and will handle the facilities modifications for us on campus, and the student and the teachers at the school will be able to access that credit union. This is being done in other districts, and a real credit union, except people from external will not be coming on campus, so we don't have to worry about that perspective. But the kids will train in paid internships over the summer, and then we'll work in internships on campus at their credit union. And so that financial education that's so important, we're going to be able to have them get some hands-on experience in that as well. I know this is a lot. I'm going to keep on moving, though, and be ready for questions and comments. Merritt Island, super excited to announce that we're going to be looking at the Advanced Aerospace Technologies program at Merritt Island. If you're not familiar with this, we worked with Embry-Riddle, and who worked in conjunction with NASA to develop a brand new curriculum framework that was submitted to the Department of Education. It has now been approved by the state board, and this is the program we are going to be hoping to be putting in at Merritt Island. This is going to be exciting for kids that are wanting to go into all things flight. So astronauts, pilots, drones, all of kids with those kind of interests can really feed into this new program. And it's also going to be offered in conjunction with FIT. So they are a strong partner in this whole concept as well. And we want our kids to be able to come to Merritt Island for some new and unique program that is fresh off the presses for the state as well. Okay, at Palm Bay, we're not looking in the next 5 years to add any new programs at Palm Bay. They have such a wide array of programs, and I've been talking with the principal about it, and we want to make sure that we have the right mix of programs and that we're not just pulling kids from different programs to support something new. And right now we have such a unique mix here that this is not one of our main priorities over the next several years. At Rockledge, we're looking at adding in the emergency medical responder program, which if you're familiar with our health science programs, you know they all start the same way with the anatomy, physiology, and foundations class. So in essence, this is just adding one additional class to their offerings that's going to help train kids for some of the emergent situations, triage, and other type of injury-related situations in healthcare. And again, in the central area, we have so much interest from our students in public service-related careers, and so this will be a nice addition to what they're currently offering at the school. At Satellite, even though JROTC is not under CTE, we are wrapping around them as well because we wanted to reset what's happening at Satellite to add in that Embry-Riddle aeronautical curriculum. And kids can earn the small UAS certification as a part of that drone cert. That's currently offered successfully at Bayside, and so we're looking to do something similar at Satellite. Space Coast is a beautiful location for an aviation assembly and fabrication program that resembles the one at O'Galley. You know, that has been one of our shining stars in Brevard for a long time, and we want to put something like that on the north end as well. So we'll be looking at hangar space and something very similar to what we're doing at O'Galley at Space Coast. At Titusville, you know, we have the new space mechatronics program that's going to be opening in August, which is very exciting. The facilities modifications are underway. We have a fabulous new teacher that's been identified. We have most of the equipment on order. Kids are going to be learning about pneumatics, circuitry, robotics. Partners have helped design the space and figure out what type of equipment we need for the program. And we're really looking at helping build this pipeline to the space tech partners through the Space Coast Consortium Apprenticeship Program and providing direct workforce into our space industry on the north end. We won't do a ribbon cutting or reveal until like late fall, so I want y'all to stay tuned for that because we'd love you all to participate in that. We want to get the space mostly ready. Okay, and at Viera, you know, for the longest time I spoke about how Viera was our one traditional high school that didn't have a skilled trades program. Well, we put carpentry in recently, and it is busting at the seams, so much so that they are having one of their existing teachers on campus that is now also teaching the level 1 class and starting to build that out. Like, kids are loving it and really getting a good benefit from that program. So we're looking at adding technical design as a complement to the carpentry program where students can learn the AutoCAD, Revit, and Inventor in addition to the skills that are needed for carpentry. And so it'll be a wonderful complement of the carpentry program and fit into the whole picture at Viera. So you also know my conversation with West Shore has been we have CTE at every school except West Shore. Not for too long. I'm working with Mr. Clark. As you know, he's a new principal there and always been a big CTE supporter. We're trying to figure out the right fit for his student body so that we can ensure that all of our students have career and technical education on their campus. And then finally, we have CTE generated funds through the finance program that's going to support implementation for these new programs by early hiring to prepare for the new programs. So from March until May, we'd like to get the new teacher on board to help them get ready for the new program and help establish all of that. Also for the teacher unit during their first year. You know, we probably won't have full enrollment the first year, and so those funds will help support that. So, of course, if you have any information on these established programs or projected plans, you know you can reach out, and I'll be happy to come and sit down and talk with you about any of this.
I just want to add, too, before we move to questions, is this, we know this was fast and furious overview to seek input, but that it really is a three-pronged approach. I think for the last 10 or 11 months, meeting with our community partners, surveying students, because we want our CTE programs to have student interests. Like, we need, what do students want to pursue? But also working with our partners. We are very blessed in the Brevard community to have partners that want to provide opportunities through internships or after graduation, those apprentice opportunities or trade school opportunities, really, and it's a win-win. To me, it's employability opportunities for students, but it's also helping our community partners that desperately need a solid and strong workforce. And then also the third prong being looking at each school individually, because as we know, each school is their own community, and we don't want to inadvertently extinguish successful programs because you have this pot of students, and if this is going to pull them all out, you know, it's making sure that there are enough students to keep quality programs going. If there are programs that just time moving by and industry changes, you know, mean that we need to intentionally extinguish a program, we'll make those decisions, but we want to make sure that our that we are thoughtful in our 5-year plan so that we're not inadvertently closing a program because we've now put a new program that's pulling all the students when the workforce and our student interest for the original program still remains.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Oh, is my microphone on? All right, perfect. All right, board, I'll turn it over to you for questions, comments. Ms. Jenkins, would you like to go first?
So I want to say thank you for the conscious thought process of streamlining Johnson Middle School to O'Galley for such a unique program that we have, because obviously all of our students from all over the county can opt to go into these programs and choice in. But I most appreciate when it's the own community that it's been placed inside of has more access to it. So thank you, because that'll only increase access for those students. I do have a question about the facilities pivot as you defined for Astronaut High School, because it's not chump change, it's $2.5 million that was vetoed by the governor. So how are we pivoting and finding $2.5 million? And clearly it's coming from something else. So what are we moving, delaying, shifting?
Sure. So now that we know for sure that this is what's happening, Dave and I, that's actually our first visit, is to go look at the campus and try to figure out what we can do. And it may not be the 2.5 million. It may be a scaled down version of that to still be able to put a good program in. And so through a combination of perhaps capital asks, the workforce capitalization grant, which we just got another iteration of that, and CAPE dollars, I think we'll be able to still put something good in at this school. But we're obviously brand new to this knowledge, and so we do have to pivot, and we have to look at our options and figure out how we can still put that program in.
Okay. I hear huffs and puffs from the end of the table when I bring that up, but it's important because it's a really cool program for our students. It's a unique opportunity for our students, but it's a ton of money. It's not like we can just find this money here. So it's important for us to advocate to our legislators who are here in Brevard County. I say that as well because there's a future program coming up that would be the most unique opportunity, not only here for Brevard County, but for the state of Florida, our aerospace. What was it, 28, 26? I don't remember. I think it was 26.
26, yes.
But I say that because it is our responsibility to ensure that we're pushing for that, because that too would be very, very expensive and not easy to pivot away from. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is very exciting, all these programs. I don't know why I got so excited about the bank, the credit union. Maybe it's my, when I was a little girl, it was. When I was a little girl, I always wanted to check out my own groceries at the grocery store, and look, voila, now you can. And, always the banker in Monopoly, too. So it's so fun to have that hands-on, practical, real life. I mean, if students are having opportunities to open up checking accounts, this is not Monopoly money we're playing with. And
Correct.
It's really exciting for them to have that real-world experience where they can go then and start working at a credit union or a bank and have that real-world experience. So what is a higher paying industry, which I know the decisions as to where the programs go, also that's a factor too, right? The state requires us to look at what are the industries that are hiring, that are high paying jobs, high wage, high demand, right? Those are the words you usually use. So great job placing all these, and I'm excited to see them grow. I think we as a board need to, even though the legislature is going to be meeting a little bit later this year, I think the earlier we can start developing our legislative agenda, the better. So we usually have, staff usually brings a what's our appropriations ask? So as soon as you guys are ready for whatever that is, kind of piggybacking on what Ms. Jenkins said, if we know we're close to needing to build another hangar, and that was a multi-agency partner effort when it was done, but the earlier the better. We'd love to get that on an agenda so we can start talking to the people who are going to be in those spots for this coming year. I don't really necessarily have a question, except for I'm going to ask a question that I already know the answer to. Are these programs available to, let's say, homeschooling families or other families who would like to come in and take a class or two in the public schools that are near their home?
Absolutely, they are. We have CTE Choice that's available for students that want to make a selection to attend a whole school altogether. They can make that decision, but there's also a part-time option
Right.
for students that want to participate in the CTE program on that campus. And so lots of options for our families to come into our schools and get that in-demand training
Right.
that they need for whatever their experience is going to be, whether it's going into college or going right to the workforce.
Right. I think this is probably the most exciting thing we're going to talk about in this meeting. And I know we've got, press releases that we do, but I think we need to publicize the heck out of this because we want our community to know. Honestly, the whole the banking thing at Mile High, I'm like, oh man, that's the year my son's going to graduate. I don't think he's going to start early enough, But I think it's time because those families whose children are middle schoolers or early high school for some of these years, and some of, they're starting to, they need to think, these will be things that help them decide where I do want my child to go to high school. Such a tricky position, but also I just want us to, as much as we can, let our public know, look, even if you're pursuing other avenues, virtual school or homeschool, your local high schools are available. If you have a program that your child, would just love to be a part of, come be a part of it, because that's, it'll build the programs, but it'll also create even more opportunities for our students across the county. So I would love for us to just start pushing this out as much as possible, not just for the students who are already in those schools, but in other schools and our private and homeschool students as well.
And Ms. Campbell, just to give comments on a couple of things that you said, I've already been thinking about what the appropriation asks might look like based on the plan. Just looking at all the different funding streams we have and how we're going to make this happen for our students. And yes, I would also like to say that for the credit union, all of our community partners are going to be an important role in the success of this because the kids will have the opportunity to participate in internships with them. They can still get financial literacy training from our partners. And so it's really going to be a collaborative effort as we look to build this out so that all of our partners feel loved and supported in their future workforce.
Thank you. Mr. Susan.
Yeah, I wanted to say how proud I am of this presentation. This is incredible. If you go back 6-7 years at where we were to where we are now, and you look at one of the biggest complaints that we had was that like the programs weren't aligned to industry, that it took forever, that if like an industry came up, one of the big things back then is they were going from 3D printing plastics to 3D printing metals, and what were we going to do and all this other stuff. And they were concerned because much of the education system usually takes forever. Like it's like turning a Titanic to bring in new programs. Who are you going to, you know what I mean? And what you're doing right here is this lays it all out. This is incredible to lay out over the next 5 years what we're going to do, because it makes it so much better for us to be able to hire people. If we know in 2 years we have to hire somebody, then we know ahead of time and we can start setting that up. It also allows us to bring in the business partners and set up the industry board prior to it, rather than, hey, we've got this program, and then the poor teacher trying to teach and set up the industry board at the same time. It also helps with the legislative asks. Like we could literally put together for the first time a 1, 2, 3 year legislative ask program where we start educating them prior to, in past we've come together and said, well, we've got these programs that we need to ask, and we didn't have the education of the members prior to it to try to get them there. They just say, yeah, well, this sounds like a good program, talk to us. So the way that you just did this and the way this is laid out is phenomenal. And I wanted to say thank you for that. I love the fact that you are listening to the industry, which is all the businesses, along with the students, to align these things. If you look at what we've needed for a long time is like you saw a lot of aerospace stuff coming up, right? That's because the need in our community is aerospace. If you look at communities across the state of Florida, they put programs in that are nationally needed, but locally they don't fill the workforce. So I wanted to say thank you to that. The other component is that a lot of these are getting tweak modifications to the curriculum, which is incredible because what you're doing is rather than, instead of creating a whole new program, all you have to do is tweak a little bit, like the diesel mechanics at O'Galley. We heard those kids come in and say, we need to have diesel mechanics put into our schools so that we can provide that for the people. You did that. It's been like, what, 3 months? So it's a pretty incredible situation there. I also wanted to, the workplace on the schools, just so you guys know, there are other businesses that are looking at doing this also. The ViStar coming in and doing the credit union is incredible. The barriers to career and technical internships are blocked because of transportation, because of times, because of all of that. So if we can put one of those great companies on our campus, it breaks all those barriers and those kids could. So kudos to you for that too. I did want to say the agricultural piece, there's a couple, we had the entire ag team was going to come from the Kempfers to everybody else. It just so happens that they're in Marco Island right now at the annual Future Farmers or Farmer Bureau or whatever it is that they're there for. And what they're doing right now is specific to what Ms. Jenkins had brought up. They're talking to the governor because they have, they're in some meetings with them throughout the day about how important this agricultural piece is. I wanted to kind of say that part of the plan could be, and I've spoken to Dr. Rendell about this and we've collaborated, that we, even if we received the money, we couldn't build the thing for a whole year. So the idea was that you could still move forward with the design build, hire an architect, get moving, and then you could go for the ask again once all of the people aligned. We know that ask to the legislature was not aligned with a lot of our normal processes, so having that, maybe if that's what we move towards, we could make that for the second year and get the design build and everything moving now, because there's no way that we, even if we received the funding, we would have been able to construct until next year anyway. So I think that that's good. I wanted to say thank you. When you spoke about Vieira High School, you're right. There is a misconception, which is a misconception for career and technical and college all across. Vieira has students that are fit the career and technical trades program, and it was such a need that did not exist before. So when you put that in there, that construction program, I think he filled it with like 170 kids in like an hour.
You're welcome.
And he told me that it's full before they even get an opportunity to, like he has the next five or six classes filled before they even get there. I went by there and I talked to him, went through the process with him. The kids even said, like, I'm not your traditional college kid. I am a career and technical kid. I go to Vieira. And there was never an opportunity for them to do anything. So I wanted to congratulate you on doing that carpentry program. It also fills the Vieira company on the alignment. And it's what's needed because a lot of people have misconceptions. You saw it even in the West Shore and Edgewood and all those others, that they need career and technical too. And that's, part of, there's students that are just not going to end up in college. So overall, I love the entire presentation. I love the fact that you put together the diesel mechanics, the drones, the 4-H for learning, the Ramalia farms, the Happiness horse farms. Everything that majority runs on a farm is diesel. So you have your timber operations, you have all of your tractors, you have all of your trucks and everything are diesel. So it's needed. And people that may not know, but everything pretty much west of 95 is all pretty much agriculture in our county when you start looking at it. So there's a lot of the Chrysofulis, the Kempfers, and everybody that are excited about this. But I don't know if anybody knew that the drone that you're putting in, the reason for that in agriculture is that they fly over the top of the ag farms and they're able to tell where the moisture, where the fertilizer goes, and it actually reduces the amount of fertilizer that goes into the ground, and it reduces the amount of overwatering that we would have for those. So it's a huge technology that can help our environment and everything else. And there's just, some of those other pieces is amazing. So I don't mean to go my extra 10 minutes, but this is a big thing. You guys know I like trades, and I really appreciate everything you guys put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Mr. Trent?
All right. Yeah, I don't have any time left, do I? I don't want to repeat, but thank you for what you're doing. What I'm taking from this is, we could go through slide by slide and say, I like, because we liked it all. And it just shows your level of dedication to the students here in Brevard. So I want to thank you, and I think out there they need to know how much effort and time this takes. But what I take from it is forward thinking. You know, it's not enough to have a CTE program, but if you're always behind the curve, it doesn't help. So Matt mentioned that it is being ahead of it, so we can train these individuals and get them the certification so they're employable. So thank you so much there. But we need to keep Brevard ahead of the game and provide the best service for all of our students and families. It is nice to hear that and make parents aware that if you're a homeschool student, you can still take advantage of the CTE programs. I think it's wonderful. I think that's really good there. While I'm in the schools, I mean, the principals, I mean, they make sure they mention how excited they are about the advancements of the CTE programs, and they're excited about it, and the kids are as well. So again, thank you so much for listening and then acting. And our CTE programs have come a long way, and it's because of the dedication that we have here. So again, it is a great example of when you have the right people in the right places and you let them do their jobs. I appreciate it very much. So, I'm done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trent. Okay, I have a few questions, and because these questions are asked in the community frequently, I think it's worth just maybe exploring and having the conversation. I get the question asked quite frequently, how is a CTE program decided to go into a certain school? Because, there will be some CTE MB out there of, oh, they have this and we want it here. So can you tell me, day one, how is this idea thought up and we move forward?
So years ago, there was a very strategic plan through looking at 4 quadrants of our district in terms of placement. So let's say, for example, there wasn't a construction program at the school. Chances are there's another program that helps kids learn a type of similar skill, like HVAC. So years ago, that was the plan that was put in place. But now looking forward, it's looking at their current offerings and saying what's missing. What skill set is needed and is growing in that specific area? Like looking down at Heritage with electricity, where are we seeing so much residential construction that's taking place? It's a wonderful location in terms of what the community needs in that area. Also looking at putting the aviation and space-related programs on the north end by Kennedy Space Center, by Titusville Airport, looking at those kind of opportunities, trying to serve kids in all different areas with the skills that are needed. And looking at the firefighting program down at Palm Bay, beautiful location for so many kids on the central to south end, but not for our northern kids. And so looking at the whole offerings at the school or in the general region and finding ways to put something new for kids to learn that leads them into jobs that are in demand in that area. And it just takes some research, working with my team, working with the principals, see what they're hearing, what the kids are saying that they're interested in. Because student surveys have been a part of a lot of this as well, is where are the interests and what's needed in this community. Because with CTE, we want to lead kids towards real jobs that are out there, whether they want to go right to work or go to college, either or, and they can do, and it's a community effort to try to get the right programs in the right places.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the other, I guess, like you, Ms. Campbell, I was very excited when I heard about the credit union that's going into the school. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. And we have several credit union partners that help our schools tremendously. So that's a model that I feel like, be prepared, that's going to be replicated, I believe. Other credit unions are going to hear that and go, oh, we could do that. And I love that idea. I was very excited to hear about O'Galley when we're looking at planning and zoning. And I think it's really great to talk to our municipalities and look at on-the-job training for a lot of those students to go there. Planning and zoning, when it comes to every different municipality in the county, is a bit of a problem. So if there's not a lot of forward thinking that happens, then we just throw things up and we have all kinds of infrastructure issues, which we're seeing all over the place right now. So that's very exciting. I think we could help our community tremendously. Let me ask this, and this is going to be like the question that the topic that no one wants to talk about. Underutilized programs. How are we looking at that and evaluating that and saying, okay, it's been XYZ number of years, however many years, we've only had so many students come through it. Is this the best program to be in place at this school? How are we handling those and looking at possibly sunsetting programs that are not being used?
So we had to make those decisions several years ago with some of our programs, and it takes looking clearly at the data in terms of enrollment. What type of certification are the kids earning that's recognized by industry? If they're earning a certification that's recognized by industry, what is their pass rate and engagement with that? How is this leading towards post-secondary experiences? How is it leading towards job opportunities? So what about the kids? What are their thoughts on it? Is it perhaps a teacher issue, a community issue? Like, what are the situations? And we don't want to just sunset programs on a whim. It's not something, I mean, every one of these you see takes careful planning and implementation in order to make it a success. But having my team and myself and administrators strategically looking at what's happening on campus and trying to make sure that it's still relevant for kids, because there's only so much room at schools for programs.
And I just want to add also is sometimes programs are under-enrolled because we're in this teacher shortage.
Right.
And if I don't have a teacher, it could be a high-quality program. And so one of the things we've had no choice but to look for is we have to look for out-of-the-box thinking. And I know we've had a lot of conversations where Dr. Rendell with our community partners has encouraged, okay, we can put a teacher in there, but they may not be all things of that career area. So we provide the teacher, but business partners and industry folks out in our community, we need you to have the engineer that comes in and says, okay, in-kind donation, we're going to donate someone every Tuesday that's going to come. A prime example is up in the north with the medical field.
Yes.
That is not a program that we want to talk about sunsetting, but those conversations have come up just at a teacher, not having a teacher. And so students are not enrolling in the program because there's no teacher. And so we've, worked with our community partners such as Parish to, you need us too, because we're creating a workforce. And how can you help us with that adjunct teacher opportunity? So that is sometimes where we hear programs aren't doing well, but peeling back the onion as to why and what can we do differently to meet the need.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid point. It's a vicious cycle because a lot of times those individuals are pulled from the teaching classroom because they're needed so heavily in that industry. But what ends up ultimately happening is we're trying to build a pipeline to that industry to help you guys because we know that you're so short-staffed. And by pulling that teacher out, we unfortunately create a bigger problem that just kind of that cycle keeps on going, which leads into my next point that I had here is I think it would be smart for this board to really speak to the Department of Education about the CTE teachers qualifications. I think that's one of the issues that we constantly hear is that I know they extended the amount of years in order to pass certain tests they got to pass, but a lot of our industry certs that are coming through, such as I'm going to use my welding instructor at Astronaut, retired, a phenomenal individual. He does this for the love of helping the community and teaching these kids a skill. He is highly, highly, highly sought after. Doesn't have to do it. And so those are the teachers where you're like, that's a perfect person for that classroom because they're doing it for all the right reasons. But when the state comes in and says, hey, we got to have this test taken, and he's going, no, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And you can't fault them for that. So that's something that we really need to take an initiative to speak to the Department of Education about. The only other thing I'm going to bring up is the appropriations that we're asking for. It would be very helpful if you let the board member know when you're doing that, just so that we know and we can go behind you and help lobby for those things. So I think sometimes that may fall in translation, but if you let me know, hey, I'm asking for this, then we can go back into our legislators and say, hey, we need this, please, please, please make this happen. And then I know Brevard County hires a lobbyist as well, so I'm assuming that our lobbyist is working on appropriation requests. I probably shouldn't assume that, but if they're not, they need to be. So that's another just thing I want to throw out there to you guys.
And
So-
that was another need for the 5-year plan is so that we can be strategic with those appropriations. And so we're paddling in the same direction versus people writing appropriations. Like we all want to be paddling for
Right.
the 5-year plan. And so then we're all in communication with that.
Yeah, overall, though, very, very excited. We're doing a lot of really wonderful things. You guys are doing amazing work in the CTE department, and I love all the events that we get invited to when we see these kids graduating with different industry certs. That's amazing. They all had job placements, which was just phenomenal to see these kids come across and be recognized with a job placement already. I'm going, this is a win for Brevard County. So good work there in that department. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And just to speak really quickly about the qualifications piece, we did have some wins last year with the teacher qualifications. We've updated our administrative procedure to reflect. That provides us some flexibility as a district to make decisions on who we can qualify, which is excellent. I would just say one more piece is perhaps pay for our industry partners coming in to teach would be something to consider.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We are going to move on to the next topic on our agenda, which is the presentation of the preliminary student achievement data. And is that you, Ms. Harris, that's presenting that? Okay. Wonderful. Well, we'll turn the floor over. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Ms. Harris is moving to the second presentation, I just want to throw that disclaimer out there again to anybody watching that maybe didn't see the beginning of the meeting. These are preliminary data. This is the scores that we believe we have based on the information we received from the state to this point. The state still reviews the data and will issue final scores and final grades, we believe, late July. So this is what we have to this date. This is what we believe to be true as of this date.
And I feel that we just can't say that enough, just not only to you, but to our stakeholders that are tuning in, because there would be a lot of people that would say, then why are you sharing now? And so before we start, I want to say our why for sharing now is if we wait we know on July 24th, their state board meeting where they will vote on options for school grade. No one has said that we'll get school grades anytime close to July 24th. So we could get them that afternoon. They could have, predetermined based on all the possible options. But we know as last year, we didn't receive informational school grades till very late, almost at the end of first semester. And as we want to continue to be not a district that is data aware, but a district that is data driven, we have to make decisions now. And so we feel like if we're making decisions now, we want to be transparent with you on what we know to be true today, knowing that a lot of things could happen and it's not official. So preliminary is the tune of the day. But I do want to start off, and you'll notice this is iReady and it is not FAST. And if you remember with our K2 FAST data, students can be taking different tests. And so what we did as a district team is last week we met and dove into every piece of our K2 data, both on the FAST side and the iReady. And I will say it's very, very similar. This is much easier for stakeholders to understand. And so that's why I'm sharing the K2 data here. But just know that we have looked at where it aligns with that FAST data. But it's just because if I'm a first grader working on early literacy, I'm getting a score on a test that another first grader may be in FAST reading, and so they're taking a different test. And so when we give you the data, it's hard to compare from year to year because there's a different number of children in the different tests in like first and second grade. So if we look here, you will see, I'm very pleased to say that our teachers, we've made a different focus on implementing phonics instruction, and that is to eliminate word callers, but actually students that can decode words. We did a lot of conversation about that at our last board work session, but I feel like we're starting to see some movement. You'll see in second grade, the movement is not as fast as the other two grade levels, and I think that presents also in our third grade when we get into there. So we still have work to do, but we're very pleased to see that our initial steps towards a change of practice are paying off in student gains. When we look at math, again, you will see our kindergarten students and teachers are really showing some different movement than we have in the past. And I can only attribute that to, because our resources are the same, obviously different students, but I think that it's fidelity to high quality practices and leveraging those high impact instructional practices. Any questions on the K2 before I move into the 3 and above?
I'm just looking at the numbers across the bottom, students assessed. Why is there such a dip in 22, 23 in the number of students who are taking the test? Because it's not like we had 1,000 fewer students.
What I can speak to is this is D3 data, or diagnostic 3 data, And that is optional. And so that's one of the things that when we looked at, can this be data that drives that?
Gotcha.
We looked at how many students, because our diagnostic 3 is optional for all schools.
Okay.
And so we looked, and when we were able to see that when it wasn't optional, there wasn't that difference 2 years ago,
Gotcha.
we knew that this was data we could speak to and make some decisions on.
Good, thank you.
So now we're going to go into our preliminary FAST data for ELA. So this screen is simply our elementary schools, and you will see in grades 3 through 6, we showed improvement, and spoiler alert, 3 through 10, we showed improvements in all areas of ELA this year. So we're thrilled of the work of our students and teachers in the area of ELA. I've also included our state data here, because we want to obviously compare ourselves to the state average, and goal is always to be exceeding that state average. But something that I want to call attention to is that column on the far right. And once we spend time on this slide, all of the proceedings or the further slides will be the same setup. But seeing another indicator we look at is, did we show growth? And we're always looking to show more growth than the state average, but at least to meet that. So we're very pleased, but we know that in 3rd grade, that was a cell for our school grades this year, for the first time ever, that 3rd grade cell. So we are putting all that into our K-3 next school year so that we can change student outcomes for that 3rd grade. But overall, exceptionally pleased with our ELA improvement, going up in every area. Now we're going to look at our secondary schools. Again, in the area of ELA, increases, you will see some quite significant increases in areas that in the past we took a hit. So we know that our 6th grade data has always, because they're in our elementary schools, we've always been a state leader. In some cases, we've taken some hits in 7th grade when other districts haven't, because they take it in 6th grade. So we're exceptionally pleased to see the growth that we demonstrated in ELA for 7th grade. Despite that being where our students transition to middle school. Any questions on ELA before we move to math?
You got to highlight 10th grade. That's a big jump in 10th grade. That's a graduation requirement, so those are more kids have already met their graduation requirements. So kudos 10th grade teachers.
So as we move to our math area, one of the areas I want to highlight is 4th grade. We knew statewide districts last year struggled in their proficiency rates in the 4th grade. And sometimes that will happen when a new test comes out. There's a particular grade that will stand out. So the fact that Brevard teachers were able to overcome that, because it's the same assessment as last year, at a faster rate when the state couldn't, or didn't, I shouldn't say couldn't, didn't, makes me very pleased of our 4th grade students and teachers. Again, in looking, we have all of our areas in elementary math went up over the preceding year. Again, you can compare it to the state. The 6th grade state is catching some ground, and so we're always looking at that state ranking, especially in the area of 6th grade.
We're still 10% higher.
Yes. We're going to be high ranking, I know. Now, when we move to our secondary math, you will see there are some areas I want to kind of provide a narrative, just because, data tells the story. But for those 8th grade students, those are your students that are not taking algebra in 8th grade. And so, on the board agendas, at the board meeting agendas, we've put some math materials such as corrective math, algebra tiles. Initially, our conversation was, we know we need to beef up student learning experiences in algebra, specifically in our high schools. And looking, because those students have, in some cases, they're needing that EOC to graduate. But the more we started really looking at data, we're going to implement those algebra tiles that have already been board approved into our 8th grade and 7th grade algebra courses as well. And those frameworks, I think, should help close the gap here, because some students, they need more time in that concrete where I'm visualizing the math. before I'm able to do it in an abstract form. And I think some of those resources will be strategic to help us both with our 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade algebra classes, but our 9th grade, but also what can we infuse into that 8th grade math course. There's another conversation that we're continuing to have is in Brevard, our 7th graders that take the MJ Math Advanced course. A little more than half of the standards of that course are 8th grade content. So if you look across the state, about half of the districts have those students taking the 8th grade assessment, and half of them have them take the 7th grade assessment because that course encompasses standards from both the 7th and 8th grade test. We've looked at that, we've analyzed data to if our students were to continue performing as they have been, how would that impact us here? And basically it would just flip the data. So we're gonna continue to look at that conversation. But that is where you will see a pretty significant gap between where the state is and where Brevard students are performing. That encompasses some of that because for districts that are taking the other test, they're closer to that state average, but their proficiency rates aren't that different from us. Any questions on the math data?
I have more of a statement to make on this one, and I don't know if this is even doable, but backing this up and this idea of algebra being entered in at an earlier age, I know that probably is a little like, but the fundamentals of it, starting in 6th grade, I think, I mean, I can speak to it personally on my own child, but that teacher that taught her, Mr. Muggy, shout out to you, phenomenally set up his students for success. So I'm like, it can be done at an elementary level where there's more time to focus in on these things. So it might be something worth considering.
Yes.
We can look at his teaching practices and replicate them.
And knowing what teachers that have their students go into 7th grade algebra with more skills, because in Brevard, our 6th graders all take the 6th grade MJ math course. If we were to divide and have MJ Advance and MJ in our 6th grade, we would require our teachers that are K-6 elementary certified to be math certified. And right now, we are struggling to have our teachers add a additional certification area. And so something that we're trying out this summer is our first summer, so we'll be able to see, based on our 7th grade algebra students' performance as well as their teacher feedback, is if your child is going to take 7th grade algebra, knowing that they're coming from 6th grade where they've had just the MJ course with some pre-algebra maybe infused in, but it's not in the 6th grade MJ standards, so the potential exists that it hasn't been. We have a virtual opportunity that you can do either on campus, so some of our schools are offering it on campus this June, or you can do it at home, and it's providing that pre-algebra skill set so you are to close that gap between our 6th grade and our 7th grade algebra, because that is, we hear a lot of parents say, my child didn't get this learning and is really struggling when they have not struggled. And perhaps we're a level 5, perfect 6th grade math score.
Right.
But because those standards are not pre-algebra, we're doing this virtual opportunity to help close the gap. And again, many of our sites are doing it on campus. So students are going for the month of June to complete this course, but it is optional at this time for students that are going into that 7th grade algebra.
Okay, well, I like it.
That
Thank
is a known concern. Just,
Yes.
there's a lot of words to say that's a known concern we're trying to tackle. Then as we move in, you will see our 5th grade science scores went up. Last year, you may or may not remember, that was our first time that we saw a bump in 5th grade because we had been kind of stagnant or taking a step back. Last year, we went up 1%, and then again this year, 1%. In our 8th grade, you see what's happening there. Again, we want to reiterate, this is preliminary data. So what we did is we pulled down the data and looked at which students count in survey 2 and 3 match. So that's when we look at some of this, it could go, when it's 1%, it could go either way. And then
You
look.
skipped right over the biology increase.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's a huge one.
Huge increase, huge increase. And that, again, is something that, I have to attribute to our students and our teachers of really Because 62%, was pretty solid for last year, but to show a 5% growth and again exceed the state growth in that, big shout out to our biology teachers. Then again, you see here, we have growth in all of our areas. So it was, this is why we did not want to wait to show this data, because we have a lot of great things going on in our classrooms. And I feel that this is a tribute to our teachers showing up every day and doing correct by our students. So here is the most detailed slide, and I can kind of summarize it for you. Option 1, that is the school grade model that prior to the informational grades last year was traditionally used. But it was a 62 for all schools, elementary, middle, and high, a 62. So I'm going to go through each of the options, but I'm going to also speak to what this means for Brevard. And basically, when we look at option 2, there's a different percentage of point cutoff based on school type.
Okay.
That model was only used for informational grades last year. And so when we speak to Brevard saying what would a preferred model be, it would be option 1. And I'm going to share that's because we look at trend data. We look at over time school grade data. And that option 1 is one that has been consistent, that we can look at trend data and really make some good decisions moving forward. With option 2, we had 1 year of that model where it's different based on school cutoff. And I will say, in full transparency, this is where it hurts some of, like if you look at our high schools with option 2 and our secondary schools, having that different cutoff, it just isn't, it doesn't feel like it's level playing field for them. Option 3 is taking option 1 or 2 and creating a new unified scale. And so basically at the meeting that the DOE had for us to go over, these would be the options. Basically option 3 is the total unknown. That could be a whole different grading scale, either to reflect one cutoff for each school grade based on one type, for all school types, or option 2, or model 2 of option 3 would be different cutoffs for school types that could be a whole new formula. So that is the very much unknown that we do not know. So I want to just take a minute.
So are you, just to kind of clarify for the audience that may not know some of the background that the board already knows, is these are the formulas used to calculate school grades. And the State Board of Education is meeting July 24th to decide which formula to use to calculate school grades this year. And option 1 is the formula that's been used for many, many years with those cutoffs for the different grades. Option 2 was used last year with this informational baseline grades. Keep in mind, we did not have learning gains. Those are cells that you earn points for the amount of growth that students make from year to year. So option 2, if you look at it, they raised the levels in certain grade levels, raised the threshold, the different point totals to get an A, B, C, or D, that kind of thing. So that was only used last year. So we don't know if they're going to choose this one or the old option 1 or create a new one. So that, that's what, it's kind of complicated, but basically it's which formula is the state board going to choose to calculate grades, we don't know.
So here's what Ms. Francis's department worked with ET to control what we can control. And so we know the proficiency rates of our students, and I'm going to share with you on the link the simulated school grades. Again, this is not from the DOE. This is using the formulas that we know of how much is counted in each cell, but also working with our partners in ET because we know students have to be present for that survey 2 and 3 to go into that school grade calculation. So you have this available on the link, but just some summary. If we were to go with option 1 in elementary, That looks 26 schools earning an A, 14 schools earning a B, 16 schools earning a C. Some true highlights of option one as we scroll through would be we have several schools moving to an A. Anderson Elementary would move to an A from a previous grade of C. Audubon Elementary would move to an A from a previous grade of B. Challenger 7 would move to an A from a previous school of B. Meadow Lane Intermediate would move to an A from a previous grade of B. Sherwood would move to an A from a previous grade of B. And finally, Williams would move to an A from a previous grade of B. We have another group of schools that would move up from a grade of C to B, and that is Cape View, Columbia, Coquina, and Oak Park. We have moving to a C from a D of informational grades would be Endeavor, Fairglen, and Saturn. This would leave us with 0 D or F schools, and our only decline would be Pinewood moving from an A to a B. So that was all option number one. If we look at this column over here under option 2 from elementary, still 26 schools earning an A, 19 earning a B, so we have 5 that move up from a C to a B, with 11 schools earning a C. Schools moving to an A would be Anderson, Audubon, Challenger, Meadow Lane, Sherwood, and Williams. And moving to a B that is not on the previous list would be Imperial Estates, moving from a C to a B, and Jupiter moving from a C to a B, and Saturn moving from a D to a B. So again, we would have no D or F schools because we'd have Endeavor and Fairglen moving to a C. And our only school in the elementary going down would be Pinewood from an A to a B. So that is all of the summary of how that could impact us with both option 1 or 2 with our preliminary simulation.
So
So that's the
again,
thing. We don't want any, I'm going to keep it on the elementary for a second. Option 1 and option 2 are both good. We both, in both of those formulas, we've improved. Most of our schools have improved their letter grades. It's fantastic. It's good news. That's why we wanted to share it. But with the caveat that it's preliminary. Again, like we don't want everybody to run out and say, oh, my school got an A or my school got a, because we don't know. But using option 1 and option 2, using the matched students that we matched, really, really good news. And we didn't want the summer to go by without our schools hearing, this potentially great news.
and not a single D school. They've all
Correct.
moved up. That's tremendous.
No school is in turnaround status or anything like that.
Right.
And I think the key, though, is that just from a statistical data perspective of achieving the same thread of comparisons, changing the way we evaluate is good in some instances, but you have to have that baseline, and having that baseline go through the last couple of years to where we can identify is needed. When you have consistency in data is one of the biggest things. So shifting, even if they did come out with a grade 3 and everything else, or option 3, I like having this as a understanding of where we were going forward. I think it's amazing. I'm really happy with it.
I have a question about something you said in the beginning about option 1. So forgive me because I was trying to pull up the numbers while you were on there. So you had mentioned a couple of these schools that were going from a B to an A with option 1. Is that just due to their new scores, their preliminary scores? That has nothing to, because the numbers don't change for
Correct.
Okay.
That the difference would be is does that get them into the cutoff of 62? Like
Okay.
what
So it's just
cutoff?
because of their new data, their new scores?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
I'm
a
like,
good
there's no
point.
difference between the two for elementary. So there is, but not for A. Right. There's nothing for A. So I was a little confused.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a good point, because the proficiency, regardless of what option they pick, the proficiency is the proficiency. And so, and then when we're looking at learning gains, again, learning gains, we have, a formula that the state, provides us with. Students need to make this much growth in order for it to be an annual learning gain. And so I feel like regardless of option 1, 2, or 3, the unknown, the proficiency and the learning gains remain the same.
So I just want to make that clear. So regardless of option 1 or 2, the schools that you had mentioned going from a B to A, of course, it's preliminary data would still be legal.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
It's option 3 that we
That
just,
we don't
is the
understand.
unknown.
Got it.
Ready for secondary?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we move, at the top of the chart, you'll see our junior, senior combination schools. And so with going with option 1 for our junior, senior highs, that would be 4 schools earning an A, 1 school earning a B, and 1 school earning a C. And the grade change for this would be Space Coast Junior, Senior, moving from a B to an A. When we look at option 2, again, this column over here, that's 2 schools earning an A, 3 schools earning a B, 1 school earning a C, and the only impacts of change would be Cocoa Beach moving from an A to a B with option 2. And then we're going to move down to middle school on the chart. And with option 1, 4 earn an A, 2 schools earn a B, and 5 schools earn a C. And the summary of option 1 for middle schools would be Central and Johnson move from a C to a B. When we look at option 2, 1 school earns an A, 3 schools earn a B, and 7 schools earn a C, with Hoover, Jefferson, and Kennedy moving from an A to a B under option 2. Any questions on the combination schools or middle before we move to the high schools? So now under option 1, we have 3 schools earning an A, 5 schools earning a B, and 3 schools earning a C, with Melbourne improving from a B to an A, and Astronaut, Bayside, Heritage, and Titusville moving from a C to a B. If we look at option 2, that would be 1 school earning an A, 3 schools earning a B, and 7 schools earning a C, with the only grade change movement would be Vieira moving from an A to a B. Any questions at all on this preliminary data?
Board, any questions or comments?
When, I can't remember what the final result was, but there was conversations in the legislature last session, not this, the one we just finished, about every year, I think it was the legislature, not the state board, about every year keeping the same number of A schools, B schools, and so that like the standards would change so that we never had more than this number of A schools. Is that still going to be the case as we move forward?
That is still, and that's why we're proponents of option 1, because option 1, what they are going to look at is give all the school grades and look at it, and what you're referring to is where they say the ceiling. So they would want a commiserate % at each grade level that has been in the past. So if we've had X number, now it may be different schools because their data is, changing, but
Right.
that X number % would be there. And that's where we feel option 1 is the fairest moving forward, because that isn't something totally new that could put schools in different places than they would be when they look at that ceiling.
Right.
As they make, because once they do that, then they'll go back to state board and legislation and modify, here is what the cutoffs will be moving
Right.
forward.
Which, I hate that because it's a moving goalpost. We could have, the goal is for every school in the state of Florida to improve and get better. And if we all actually do that, the state's still going to put us in categories of A, B, C based on, well, we can only, it's a bell curve, right? Let's just keep with the bell curve rather than acknowledging the growth and improvement if we would ideally would have had it across the district, across the state. So I hate that, but I wondered if that was, so even when they get these final grades, that could still cause further adjustments as the years go on.
Yes, what my understanding is from the meetings we've attended is they're going to make their decision July 24th, and then they will roll out the data for school grades at some point following that decision-making meeting. And then that's when they will analyze that to provide the information moving forward. And that's where they'll take it
For
back
the
to say,
next year.
here's
So
what it
it'll
will look
adjust
like.
the scores for the previous year. So it's not like they're going to give us an A, give a school an A, and then they go, okay, no, just kidding, you got a B because we had too many A's this
Correct.
year. It'll
Correct.
because that's what it sounds
Correct.
like. I mean, it just means that next year it'll be that much harder to get an A.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
No takesy backsies, what we call that.
I know. Like once you put it out there, you can't change it because that would be even worse. But at least it's for the next year. We at least so the goalposts do keep moving, but at least you know where they're likely to be.
And that's why I just think it's so important. I mean, school grades, I'm never going to take away, like that is our goal. But ultimately, our goal is proficiency rates and learning gains for all students. And I feel like that is, if we keep moving in that target, we can control what we can control so that the grades will fall where they are, but we've served students.
Yeah. As we move forward, it really is an education piece for our community, for our realtors associations to understand, because it's not necessarily going to be reflected when people talk about A schools, B schools, C schools, and that's a really sad part of this process that was added, in my opinion. But it's really exciting to see the progress in these numbers. However, the state board tends to fall on these. Good work.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Does anybody else have anything else to add or say to this conversation?
I just wanted to say that, earlier when we were kind of setting the stage and we kept saying it's preliminary data, don't get too excited, or I thought people were worried that maybe it was bad data, like it was bad news. And it's actually really, really good news. We just want to temper expectations that, when the state's done reviewing it, but we didn't really want to wait till then because our students and teachers have done such a fantastic job.
Yes.
Every grade level in language arts increased. Every grade level in elementary math increased. Science, 5th grade went up, biology went up, 8th grade slight dip, also studies went up. Just really, really good news, a lot of good hard work by our students and staff, and we just wanted you guys to see that data and see where we think we're going to be, and we're voting obviously for option 1.
Yes, thank you. Very, very exciting. Thank you for all the hard work from all the people that have put in for this. So I think for all the criticism that you may receive out there, when you see something like this, you go, okay, we're doing something right. So our people are phenomenal, and we appreciate them tremendously. All right. Do we have anything further to discuss on that topic? I don't think so. I think we're on to the, do you want to take a short recess to go to the restroom, like a 5-minute? Okay, so we'll come back at 10:50. We're going to take a short recess.
3, 2.
All right, welcome back. We are on to the next topic on the agenda, which is the discipline update. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Dampier.
Good morning, board members and Superintendent, Superintendent Rendell. We're very pleased to provide our fourth quarter discipline data update. We've had an opportunity to actually look at the data from August 10th through May 24th. So that's what we're going to be comparing for this data presentation. I have Mr. Cristal. He's our new Director of Student Services. He hit the ground running last week, and so we've had an opportunity to onboard him and provide him with a lot of the data and conversations around the data, as well as Mrs. Cashin Schmidt. Today, again, we will just review briefly. There will be a slide about the discipline organization of how we actually monitor the data and make sure that we're providing data with fidelity throughout the school year. We're also going to provide an overview of the discipline data. Mr. Cristal is going to go over that, as well as some of our next steps that we have planned for next year. You know, we did have an opportunity to look at the data, and we are making some tweaks to some of the things for next year to make sure that we implement with fidelity again. And then we will go over Title IX and the bullying update and provide some next steps exciting steps for next year with that. And then we'll allow for questions at the end. Again, this is our district discipline structure of how we're monitoring discipline within our district. The Office of Student Services, our job, my role is to make sure our team, that we provide professional development to all of our stakeholders, as well as make sure that we have processes and procedures in place to make sure that our policies are being implemented with fidelity. Of course, our school principals, they are responsible for the implementation of those policies, procedures at their school site. And then our Office of Chief Schools, they make sure that if we're looking at trend data and things are not being implemented with fidelity, or that we need some more professional development at a particular school, they will intervene and provide that support with the principal at their school. Some positive impacts that have occurred over the past, I think within the past couple of months, has been the continuation of collaboration with our BFT, as well as with our transportation department. We're going to continue those practices for next year because we get on-time feedback where we can make those corrections within the moment instead of waiting until there is a problem. And sometimes it's very proactive where we'll start talking and then we'll say, okay, I'll bring that back next month, that we can continue on with that discussion. So it's a lot of collaborations with transportation and BFT this year, and that will continue for next year. Another expectation is that discipline referrals are implemented within a 24-hour period. We will continue that practice for next year and the monitoring, the implementation of that for next year as well. Very excited about the code of conduct. That is completed. We're moving forward with a lot of our training, and you will see that when we continue to talk about next steps. And we really want to focus on what are the expectations for our students. And in our code of conduct, we did place, I think it's the third or fourth page in there, expected behaviors that we want our students to bring forward. And we really have to teach those expectations. So we really, when all of our trainings, we're going to focus on that first, and then we'll go into what were the changes, and then what other expectations that we expect on our campuses. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cristal.
So this first slide is depicts the total number of office discipline referrals from that time frame that we're talking about of August 10th, 2023 to May 24th, 2024. The total number of referrals at this point was 95,814, with about 21,426 students receiving referrals. So these are going to be our targets going forward. So these are what we have set forth. This slide is, these are the top 10 highest discipline codes as of May 4th, 2024. Willful disobedience is down approximately 1%, or about 1,006 instances, fewer instances. So this is the highest discipline code by race. Currently, willful disobedience and out of assigned area are the focus across the board for all students going forward. This is part of that setting the expectations and keeping students in school, and we know that's paramount. This is the top 10 corrective actions by school. This year, there was the addition of the lunch detention code. With that, the alternative classroom placement and loss of privileges did fall out of the top 10 from 2023 to 2024. 24, sorry. This slide depicts the total number of ISS and OSS as of May 24th, 2024. We've seen an 8% decrease, or about 3,403 fewer incidents this school year. Schools are using other consequences to keep students in school. This is going to be the focus of the professional development, which will include a lot of those successful strategies that we've seen the schools. At Ascend, they kind of shared a lot of their practices, and we're going to embed that in professional development going forward. This slide shows Brevard's risk ratio, the racial breakdown. This is the district will monitor the data throughout the year as we support schools. With the overall drop in ISS and OSS, we should see a reduction in this as well through continued improvement. This slide illustrates the racial breakdown of the alternative center placements. The school year, approximately 263 fewer students were sent to the ALC. 312 students that would have gone to the ALC opted for the drug diversion program instead and are currently still in school. These are the codes that resulted in the placement at Alternative Center. So you can see those higher numbers: simple battery, fighting, and drug possession are the main reasons for placement. And that's going to be the target area of focus going forward for professional development and student support. These are the list of schools that have recommended students for placement at the ALC. And these are this was introduced in the middle of the school year, but this slide depicts the students that opted for home ed in lieu of alternative placement. The data collection started approximately around January. Going forward, this is going to be embedded from the beginning of the year going forward, so we'll have complete data there. And this next slide is the very similar one to the first one, but this is breaking down by race. So this slide depicts the same data, but it's broken down by the racial subgroups.
Next steps. We're very pleased. We already started part of this process when we unveiled some of the new changes to our MTSS problem-solving process at Ascend 2024. We did that week before last on Wednesday and Thursday. Some changes to that, and we've already started training our administrators. They were trained on June 11th, and they're going to be trained on June 20th. And we're going to continue to train all stakeholders of what these practices are and the changes that we've made. We made it less about the paperwork and more about what is it that the students need in order to make sure that they get their services and supports more quickly. We are also going to have district monthly trainings for all stakeholders. We already have that on the books with behavior, academics, and attendance. Before, with the MTSS process, we were looking at a student may come forward where we're looking at them for attendance. Then we come back 2 weeks later, we're looking at, or a month later, we find out, okay, well, there's attendance. There's an academic problem. So we are now focusing and looking at the whole child. So when we bring a child up, we're looking at attendance, all of these these things that may contribute to a student not being successful academic behaviorally as well. So we're looking at students as a whole to problem solve solutions so we can get services and supports again to them quickly as possible. We're going to continue with the behavior intervention toolbox where we actually had teachers participate in this, where they come and they get professional development on strategies, and we give them a toolkit that they can take back and utilize in their classrooms. Positive behavior interventions and supports. what does that actually look like? We talk a lot about that, but we really want to provide interventions and strategies and like a little toolbox for our teachers that they can utilize in the classroom. We're going to continue with our FBA and BIP training. We started that training last year. We're going to continue that training to make sure we have interventions and strategies that teachers can utilize within their classrooms, as well as our school principals can utilize and be a problem solver for their school staff. We're going to continue with coaching and mentoring of teams. When we look at the data, we see that there's a trend for a particular school. Our goal is to go out and meet with that school to say, hey, what kind of support, what do you need from us? So we wanted to do more of that coaching and mentoring with our schools with the problem-solving process. Further development of the MTSS website. We're unveiling a new website. We really want to work on that and have that be a resource for all of our staff, as well as MTSS. It used to be, we had one half in academic. We had an employee that was in CNI, and then we had one that was in student services. Now we have both that will be housed up under student services that will focus on the whole child and looking at it from a district-wide support of our schools. This was something important from last year. We did a pilot where schools could upload student statements into Focus. This year, moving forward, starting in August, it will be expected that all documents will be uploaded into student statements into the Focus database.
You know what I'm going to ask you real fast? Can I jump in and ask
Yes.
it? And the recommendation when a referral's written for a teacher to be able to make, that's also going to be
Yes.
starting the school year,
Yes,
correct? Okay.
Yes,
All right,
yes, I
thank you.
did. We forgot to put that on there, but yes, we already worked with ET on that. That was something that Mr. Reed worked on.
Thank you.
We're working also to align the corrective action levels to incidents and Focus, because sometimes they would not, we didn't get the data correctly because we didn't have a code or the code didn't match this intervention. So we want to make sure in some instances, we are looking at all of that, we're creating like a dummy account to go in and be able to look at the interventions as well as the codes of infractions to make sure they match. Also, we're developing training for all of our stakeholders, which will include, our teachers, our bus drivers. We already have our bus driver training already on the books, as well as training for our teachers, our administrators. And we're moving towards more of the module training. So when we have new staff that come on board, they can still get a lot of this training instead, sometimes they get lost in the crack once school gets started.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we have a library of resources that's on demand for our schools so they can utilize for training. So we're just very excited about a lot of the training that we are planning for our stakeholders to make sure that I feel like we're in a better spot than it was last year, because when I came in, it was like we were creating from scratch. And now I feel like we've gotten feedback from our stakeholders that we're tweaking a lot of the things as well as implementing a few new things as well. So are there any questions at this point about the discipline data before we move on to the Title IX and bullying?
Ford, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Jenkins.
Yeah, I have a lot. So the whole point of having this conversation 18 months ago was to, well, we all know the point. So let's talk about where it went from there, because I argue what the point actually was. If the goal was for us to correct this process, the goal should be for student behaviors to decrease in order to increase academic engagement and hopefully increase academic performance. And so it's great that we've streamlined everything. We've reviewed the code of conduct, all of that, that's great. But I've been saying for the past 18 months, every time we have this conversation, is the goal is to decrease student behaviors and increase student engagement. And we haven't seen that yet. It's been 18 months. This draft statement we're going to send out today about this presentation is frustrating to me because it doesn't really serve a purpose. And it's fluffing for no reason when we could just be honest about the positive things that have taken place and be honest about the things that we still need to work on to show that we acknowledge the benefits of the data that we've gathered. The whole point of gathering data is to use it to affect change. And I don't see that here in this statement we're going to send out today. I don't see it acknowledging some of the negative things that are in here that are leading to these next steps, which would bring positive change to our district. Those are things that we should be sharing with our community intentionally, because it shows that we're engaged and that this change was effective. So I have a question. And Ms. Dampier, I appreciate this next step section, because that's what I've been saying for the past 18 months is, what are we doing to change the behavior? If the numbers are going up, okay, what are we doing to change the behavior? Because we don't want to keep seeing that. One of my questions, because it's not in this presentation, it's not broken down that way specifically, but it has been in the past, is the two highest demographics for referrals and behavior were kindergarten and ESE. Is that still the same? Because we don't have that broken down here. Are those numbers still some of the highest? And if so, I clearly can identify the things in the next steps that are going to directly address ESE, but are we thinking forward about what can we do uniquely for those kindergarten babies that are coming in and struggling behaviorally? What do we have as a plan in place for those classrooms and for those students and those families and those schools that are struggling with those behaviors in that kindergarten? And sometimes if there's a pre-K, it sometimes is reflected in that classroom too.
One of the things is to make sure that, again, we talk about the changes, but what are specifically teaching those expectations for our students that we expect them to adhere to when they come to school. We also have put in a behavior tech at the majority of our elementary schools to really be that resource to be able to teach those strategies, because it's all about strategies and interventions as well. And I'm just going to be honest with you, we didn't do a whole lot of that this year. It was trying to get things under control as far as processes and procedures. And we've already been planning, because that's some of the things that we really want to be able to provide, interventions and strategies that teachers can utilize and, pull and be able to utilize it within their classroom. But that behavior tech will also be a resource for our schools, and we're training them up as well to be that resource. But really focusing on what we expect and how we expect them to behave in the classroom. So that's one of the main changes. I've already looked at some of the training. I'm like, if we put this, that's why it was important to put it in the code of conduct. Okay, we keep talking about, how we expect, but we've never taught it. A kid is coming to school for the first time. How do we build community in the classroom? What do we expect when the kid transitions from one activity to the next? So teaching those specific strategies in the classroom.
So, and just to preface with, my frustration and my questions aren't to you as an individual. It's to this conversation we've been having for 18 months. I don't put all of this responsibility on you. I'm well aware of everything you've been doing in this category, so please understand that. I push back a little bit on the we're not teaching the expectations. I don't believe that our kindergarten teachers aren't doing that. Do I believe that there's new teachers that need those classroom management skills? Absolutely. They can always use that support. But I appreciate you saying the piece about the behavior tech. And again, I'm just throwing it out there. Like, these are the things that we should be telling the public that we're doing in statements like this, because it's great. It's a positive thing for our families to know that we are investing in those resources to change the behaviors that we're seeing in those classrooms. So thank you. I appreciate that. My other question / comments. So when we go to, I think it's page 6, I've brought this up every single time, and I'm not going to stop until I'm gone, because it's critically important and we just keep ignoring it. When we have certain demographics and populations of students that are coming up on these data charts at a significantly higher percentage than the percentage that they represent within the population of our schools, that tells us we have a problem. We as a district, if our goal is to decrease behaviors, increase engagement, increase academic achievement, it is our responsibility to dive deep into those numbers and understand the why and understand what kind of resources and supports we can put into those schools or to those specific students in order to change it. That is our job. So I'm going to say that again. Looking forward, to page 11, our risk ratios for free and reduced lunch and Black or African American students has increased. I don't know if I'm going to use the word again or not because I don't know what the date range is on this, but it has increased while others were dropping. Again, we had a conversation about how 1.0 is kind of the neutral line. And so when you fall beneath 1, it's not necessarily a positive thing. It's showing that there is a significant imbalance. So when you have two categories of students that are significantly higher than that, again, it's showing that there's disproportionate data. And we as a school district have a responsibility to dig in and understand why and affect change for those students. I have a question about so with ALC, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, it says here that on page 12, slide 12, sorry, 263 fewer students were sent to the ALC in 23-24. And forgive me because I don't have the comparative slide in front of me, but I could have sworn we were just presented information about our ALCs where the numbers were higher than ever. Am I inaccurate in that statement? Or was that just the conversation because it was talking about moving from 3 days to 5 days?
I don't recall the numbers being higher at the third quarter presentation.
Okay, so
And the third quarter presentation was up until that point, comparing last year to this, to last year to this
This is
year.
totality.
And now, this data is comparing last year, the full year,
The full
to
year.
now,
Okay.
this year, the full year.
got it.
If I remember right, at the end of the third quarter, we were actually looking at whether we could go back to 5 days full-time.
Right.
Because at one campus.
Right, but it was very
we could do
high.
that.
That's what I'm asking. So it's because it's the full year data. That's different.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I brought this up 18 months ago and I'm going to do it again and I will keep doing it again because it's my obligation. So we have disproportionate data on the types of students that are being sent to ALCs. We have, my color codes are backwards, sorry, or they're black and white, I should say, underneath, okay. 274 Black or African American students are being sent to the ALC and 235 white students, when Black students represent 15% of our population, when Black students are, according to our slide 6, performing these behaviors at a lesser rate, but they're attending the most severe consequences more often. That math doesn't math up for me. So again, it's our obligation as a school district to look into that data and ask ourselves why. When I brought this up a long time ago, one of the responses was some students are opting to do home education in lieu of ALC, and I asked for this data to be presented a long time ago, and I'm appreciating that it's back on here. And what it shows is that the percentages of Black students opting for home ed is not significantly different than our white students, not enough to explain why there are more Black students inside of the ALC than white. It is absolutely our obligation to pay attention to the data that we've asked for and to do something about it. Again, Ms. Dampier, I appreciate slide number 17 tremendously because I understand the benefits of this, and the more and more new staff that we have and fresh educators that we get, the better that this can make them in that classroom management. And I most appreciate the MTSS conversation because someone from the ESC world, we've had this conversation privately, but just to say it publicly, it is an absolute nightmare sometimes for some of our schools that don't have a huge, tremendous ESC staff to get students into the place that they would be most successful. So thank you for taking that seriously and deep diving into all of that paperwork.
I also want to mention something else in reference to the Ascend 2024. I know when we talk about culture and climate, that includes the behavior, academics, and includes all of those measures. We felt so strongly that this needed to be in our school improvement plan that it is one of our goals that our schools were working on at SIN 2024-25. And they had groups where they were looking at, okay, what are some of our school-wide expectations for I hate to talk about tiers, but tier 1, school-wide expectations. Those were some of the questions. What does that look like? And then what are we going to do for those students who the tier 1, those school-wide expectations are not working for? What are some things that we're going to do differently or enhance to address and try to, make sure that we provide some of the strategies for those students to ensure that they're successful. So there is a process that the schools went through to make sure that we're looking at all students, regardless of race. It's like, okay, what are we doing for those students who are not, successful in the classroom? What are we going to do with that? So, and that SIN 2024 consisted of teacher leaders as well as administrators, school counselors, so everyone getting together and problem solving, what does that look like? And they had the opportunity, we provided our office discipline referral data for the schools, their OSS, the ISS, as well as their climate survey, so they could create these goals and put in action steps of what they were going to do for next year. So all of this is, it's gonna help us, we think, because when you have a foundation of everyone looking at the data for the academic as well as the behavioral and attendance portion of that it's going to set us up for success. So we will be monitoring this as well. They're going to turn those goals in before the end of the summer. We'll be monitoring the action steps, but our goal is to really problem solve. And we also talked about how the principals can set up problem solving, what that model is going to look like on their campus, to look at, like you just said, the individual student that things are not working for that tier 1. So there are some things that we are planning to do differently for next year.
And I appreciate that. If that information as it comes in and there's the review periods can be presented to the board or just provided to the board, I would appreciate that, because ultimately I love to hear that we're doing that, and I love to hear that our district leaders are doing that, but it is 100% a top-down approach, and if it's not coming from the top or from this board and the board doesn't buy into it, it's not gonna be sustainable. So please present that data to us as soon as you have it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you for following through with our request this year to do this quarterly update, because it was really important for us this year to start seeing the differences. Now I'm going to emphasize that word "start" because I have a different perspective, Ms. Jenkins, in this conversation. When we, as aggravated as I have also been at maybe how this conversation started, the fact was that 18 months ago we started the conversation, and that was going to require policy changes, which we did last year. It was also going to require really doing great record keeping, which we found out through our audit, as well as just staff like we weren't doing that. We had the ability with Focus now to incorporate all of that data keeping, record keeping. And so actually we should have anticipated and staff did, some higher numbers in certain categories, because for the first time people were actually, being held accountable to record things, to record the consequences, to make sure that it's in there. And then as we've gone through, and then we've got the student code of conduct, I am not in dismay at this point over the numbers that have increased. I'm super excited to see the decrease in willful disobedience, because we didn't recategorize that in any way. I mean, that's its own category, because some of the fighting and aggression, like we've moved things around in the student code of conduct from last year to this year, but and then in the coming year, but that one is willful disobedience. We didn't recategorize that I recall. So I'm excited to see little victories, right? And fewer students being, our rates of in-school and out-of-school suspension, because we gave people options. But what I'm looking for moving forward is, now that we have a clear, more concise student code of conduct, now that we have had a year of more accurate record keeping, And we're moving into year 2 of that more accurate record keeping. Now that we have training that's going on, that's gone on through the year, but it's specifically heavily focused this summer, from here on out, I want to see those numbers go down. And I will have an expectation. I have a positive, and I'm an optimist, but I have a positive expectation that those numbers will continue to go down because we will be able to more effectively deal with this. I would, however, though, join Ms. Jenkins in saying I think we need to add that conversation about the behavior text to our press release, because when I look at these, we have in the past looked at those kindergartners that are coming in, and even the 7th graders that are coming. It's those kids moving up into the next level. So it's 9th graders. There's where we always see the higher behaviors because they're moving into that new atmosphere and they just have got to get their feet underneath them. But things like willful disobedience, out of assigned area, classroom disruptions, physical aggression, those particular 4 out of our top 10, I think in an elementary setting, in that kindergarten setting, is going to particularly be affected by having that behavior tech in the classroom. And I would add to that, even though it's more of an academic thing, we are now funding those IAs. And the truth is, even though those IAs fall into the academic side of the house, those IAs that we're putting into kindergarten, when students are able to more fully engage in their academics because there's more people to help them, then the behaviors should also fall because they're focused and there's more eyes and hands and people able to help them focus on those academics. So again, another thing that I think is going to help when we look at future behavior issues, future discipline reports, is that we're going to have more people in the building focused on, students being more actively engaged in their academics and helping to focus them back when it comes to behaviors. And so, moving forward, if these numbers stay the way they are, chop, chop, let's do something different. But I really think that we're now in a place, this coming year is a year that I expect all these to fall. And I may be wrong, but I think we've done too much work, and your department and the staff and from all the way from the top down to the schools has done so much to make sure that we're set up for success moving forward in the future. Okay, that being said, I wanted to ask a question about how our in-school and out-of-school suspension numbers, which would have been slide 8, might or might not have been affected by the drug diversion program. Because we know obviously our expulsions have gone down because students have the opportunity, but could these drops right here, these drops are in the thousands, so the 313 kids who chose out of drug diversion. But are those students, when they're first, and this is a process question, it may be a chief of schools question, when a student is first found to have alcohol or THC, whatever it was that would have give them the options of ALC or a drug diversion program, are they included in these numbers? Are they serving some out-of-school suspension days? And would that have gone down because of the fewer numbers of students? Are they still serving those out-of-school suspension days before they start the drug diversion program? That's my question. Are you tracking? I'm trying to be clear. Is this number affected at all by that?
Yeah, so the way the process works, they are immediately placed on a 10-day suspension pending.
Okay.
And so before you can set up the hearing with the parents and offer drug diversion, all that, it usually takes several days.
Right.
So the amount of time that a student would be out on suspension before they go to the ALC or enroll in drug diversion is probably the same.
It's the same. Okay, so this is a true, decrease in out-of-school and in-school suspensions. Well, they wouldn't have gone to in-school suspension, but out-of-school suspensions not affected by that because they're going to go ahead and conserve those 10-day pendings until the decision is made.
The number of days are out would probably be this because
Would be
it
the same.
usually doesn't end up being 10. It's at some point we.
Right.
But no, I think the reason that the numbers are down is because the schools used other disciplinary consequences, and they were attacking behaviors earlier in the process, which led to fewer suspensions because we didn't get to the point where it was going to be a suspension.
Good, thank you.
And they really utilized that lunch detention, if you saw that in the data.
Yeah.
So that went up, and that's
Well,
the strategy.
and I have to point out, this is actually surprising to me. We made the change last year for the last half, 3 months or the last half of the year, to give principals the authority to suspend more. Mm-hmm. They could do more without district approval, and yet the number still went down. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a positive show as well. I mean, because the expectation may have been from some, oh, if you give the principals the authority to suspend more without checking it, they're just going to be suspending right and left. And that's not necessarily, I mean, we may have some at some schools, but I mean, that's not necessarily proving true. So I'm glad to see that. Another little positive in this, but you know, like I said, I expect those numbers just to continue to come down.
And just so you know, the hiring of the behavior tech came from my team and I visiting schools and having conversations with principals. And they, and I could see that they were struggling. Somehow, actually, I witnessed
Yeah.
a couple of them where they were spending a lot of their time at the elementary level.
Chasing kindergartners.
Yes, and it's not, and so this behavior tech is for the whole school. It's not even for our ESC students, it's for those students who who need to be redirected and taught those strategies. So I wanted to make sure Ms. Jenkins didn't think that, I didn't think the teachers do a great job, but for those students who it's not working for, redirecting and reteaching and modeling for those kids in the class, in the classroom or outside of the classroom. That's why that position was brought forward. So that came from us looking at the data and having those problem-solving conversations with principals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Susan.
Hey, Dr. Rendell, I just want to kind of, and Ms. Pam, I want to ask you guys a couple of questions because there were some statements made earlier that I'm not sure if they were made incorrectly or not. But Dr. Rendell, do you feel that our student achievement has gone up? Did you just present today on our achievement levels going up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the presentation we just shared showed that we've recorded increases in ELA and most math and science.
Okay, and then Ms. Dampier, did we see a significant change in the staff surveys from before discipline was corrected till now?
I can tell you, we only did a survey in the spring. The goal next year, and we've already had this conversation, is that we will do a survey in December as well as year end. So we'll have this was just the baseline data.
Right.
We were just coming in and we didn't think it was fair to give them a survey in December when we were just starting to, and we were working out those things that needed to be implemented with Fidelity. And so next year, the goal is that we'll have that survey twice in December and in May before
Sure,
they leave.
and you had a survey that went out that showed that 86% felt comfortable with the discipline changes and they were, right?
Yes, and based on the conversations that we've had and meetings, monthly meetings we have with BFT as well as with transportation, we'll continue to have that. They feel like we're addressing some of those deficiencies that were not being addressed prior.
So that would be successful in that we've had the survey and discussions inside of our unions and trade groups that they feel that this process has worked and we're working towards better goals and there's a constant evaluation and going forward.
Yes.
Okay, and the survey that was given out by the auditors showed a significant difference in what we're seeing now, correct?
RSM.
Yeah, RSM, the
RSM,
auditors
yeah.
came out and showed
Yes,
a survey
before,
that was
yeah.
saying that we had deficiencies in a lot of our disciplinary actions. And the survey that we have recently has shown a difference and showing that what we're doing is making a difference with our unions.
Yes, based on, the topics that they had, they wanted us to make sure that there were processes and procedures in place and that we had where we were putting data into focus and doing that with Fidelity. So all of those things, yes, we've done those things that were outlined in RSM.
Okay, Ms. Dampier, do you feel your team, you and I talk a lot about this, and what you end up finding is that we're talking where you're combing through the data and you're always trying to find improvements in processes, meeting with your principals one-on-one. Can you talk a little bit about that process that you go with your teams, your meeting inside the schools? Can you walk through that a little bit?
Each one of my directors, we have data metrics that we look at and monitor on a monthly basis. And we, as a team, we look at the data. We look at all sorts of data, not just the behavioral data, but we look at the threat assessment data. We look at the SRI data. We look at all of those to tell us a story about a school. Mm-hmm. If we're looking at it from, is this particular school having issues in every area? Or, for example, if Title IX, there's a cross connection with that and what we're seeing as far as office discipline referrals. That tells us where we need to go out and, meet with schools and see, hey, how can we support you? And that's done on a monthly basis. We're going to continue that practice again. I may be tweaking a few things as far as some of the metrics. Now that we're going to have the data dashboard, they won't have to spend as much time, Mr. Reed. There was a lot that went into us pulling those data metrics, but I didn't care because that's going to lead us into improving our practices. Also, when we're looking at whether or not data codes, or if we're schools that are actually completing the referrals within a 24-hour timeline, that also provided us an opportunity to look at the data for professional development. If we're seeing trends where I'll just give you an example, willful disobedience is occurring, okay, what are some things that we can help a school with willful disobedience? Also going over the data at the monthly principal meetings. Once we see that there's a trend with, I think we did so many, every month we did a principal meeting, and it was based on what we saw with processes and procedures and some of the data metrics. So as far as implementing with Fidelity, that process really, we started in October making those visits, and not just there with ESC as well, looking at how we can improve practices and support our schools. And we did some meetings, and we walked with BFT as well, just to see what was happening at a school to provide some additional supports.
And I think to Ms. Campbell's comments is that this year has been a lot of that. And I knew you were going to say it because your number one thing that you consistently say is we need to figure out the data, hold everybody accountable, but then find the supports that are needed to help these children. And I think we don't talk about that enough. That was mentioned that I agree with. We don't talk about your amazing work that you've been doing on the back end. And just like you said, you started going out in October to address these issues. It's not something that could have been addressed immediately and turned. And I just knew you were going to say that the number one thing that I think that you've brought to the table that we discuss all the time is the supports to the schools. You're in the schools, you're meeting with the schools, you're bringing BFT to the schools, you're doing a lot of that stuff. And that was not something that was evident before. And I think that that is going to Ms. Campbell's comment, turn the corner on a lot of this stuff, because you can't just flip a switch and expect it to change. But there is hard work, determination, and identification that you're doing that's making it. So I wanted to thank you for that one. Dr. Rendell, can you explain to me the correlation between 3,403 days of out-of-school suspension to student achievement? Or, you know what I mean, less days? Can you give me that? Because I think that kind of, to help the public understand what that means.
Yeah, so obviously if the student's not in class, they can't learn. And, that's probably the best number in the whole slide presentation, is the fact that we reduced the number of OSS days and ISS days. The number of in-school suspension days were reduced by 20%. So that and the out-of-school suspension, it's over 3,400 days of not missed instruction, 3,400 student days back in the classroom, so to speak. And so even though we, increased accountability and, wrote more referrals and issued more consequences, the bottom line is, in the end, more kids were actually in class, compared to the previous year. More days of in-class instruction, not lost days of instruction, which would have probably impacted academic achievement.
And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, is when we throw the number out there, 3,403 days of less suspensions. That sounds good because it's less kids, in trouble, or days suspension, but it directly affects the achievement of those students. And I know Jean and others that are on this board know that when those kids are inside the classroom, that's when they truly learn. And being suspended is not our goal. Our goal is to have them inside the classroom. Dr. Rendell, can you tell us how the drug diversion program supports student achievement? How does it that keeping those kids at that school, which is, again, our number one goal, can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so the drug diversion program, we got to give the board credit for taking the bold step to put that in place this year. Offered these students the ability to remain at their home campus, remain enrolled in their coursework, 7 classes that they were at their home campus. The Alternative Learning Center is not the same learning environment, so the drug diversion program allowed them to remain in their home school, access the same high-quality curriculum, 7 periods a day. Some of those courses are not available at the ALC. Now, it was high risk, high reward kind of thing, because if they messed up, they were going to then forfeit not just their home school, but the ALC. They were going to be expelled out of school. But, the board took that step and offered that program, and it's been very successful. All those students were able to remain, again, like I said, at their home school and access their standard curriculum.
And I think there was, thank you for that, Dr. Rendell. I think there's some other things is that you have, in some instances, some schools that did a significant increase with all of what we laid out for them, and some that needed some development and supports. Like Rockledge had, I think, 27 expulsions last year, and they only had 7 this year. And others, there's some great schools that have done some great things, and I think we need to honor them for what they are. And then other schools that are going through some of those issues, support them, find out how we can help them and get them. Because our goal here today is not to find out to just reduce the amount of times kids get expelled and everything else. It's student achievement. And I think that looking at the numbers by both how we are showing the achievement gains today, along with showing that we're reducing the total out of school suspensions, along with some of the things that you guys said is amazing. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. That's it. Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Susan. Mr. Trent?
All right, well, so we don't repeat.
I'm so sorry. I did a lot.
Just stop
there.
looking at my notes. More than months ago, we were talking to a lot of educators in this room and parents, and I think we all do what we do, either teach or go into education or run for the school board in hopes of improving student achievement. Otherwise, what is the main goal of a school district is doing that. I don't believe in consequences. Not every number has to make sense if the goal is being achieved. And I think we've seen it today that we are achieving that goal of student achievement. It's happening. There is a correlation. I think a lot of things with coaching in my life is if you take care of the small things, sometimes it takes care of the big things. And I don't have expectations on certain numbers going down. I want teachers and administrators to continue doing what they do with the situation that they're faced every single day. I'm not going to put an expectation that I want less referrals or less discipline issues taken care of. I don't. If that was out of hand and we were not improving student achievement, then we have an issue. But when I see tardies and mishandling of phones, those things going up, and we're still achieving student achievement goals, that's a good thing. When I see willful disobedience going down, that's the big things that we didn't have to take care of as much because we took care of the small things. And it all leads to that. When it's an emphasis that you get to school on time and you get into class, now student achievement can happen. It also is the willful disobedience or fights, things like that doesn't happen in the hallways because the students are in the classrooms and they're on campus and they're in schools. That's exciting to see that things are actually working that way. That's the way it's supposed to happen. I'm excited to see the consequence of lunch detentions. That's not an exciting topic, but it's an immediate consequence to an action. Many times I've witnessed at the schools I were at where the bell's rung, we're out in the courtyard, and they're giving out a lunch detention to serve that day because of something that student chose to do that morning, and that handles it. You got to be in the classroom. That in-school suspension, the out-of-school suspension, those days, that matters. That's huge. Give it a hand to the board for taking the risk on the drug diversion program. That could have blown up in our faces. It really was a high risk, high reward for the student, but it was also for us as well. So I applaud us for doing that. I see that students are staying in schools without us having to compromise our accountability to those students. We're still doing what we're supposed to be doing in standing strong and saying, students, you need to be in class. You need to put the phones away. It's disturbing still. I know this probably is, you're just going to say because I'm old, but it's disturbing to see the behavior at kindergarten. You wonder, why are they coming into schools with such behaviors? I don't want to get into what I think, but how many times do we go out to dinner and we see, babies with cell phones in their hands? And, maybe we need to really focus at home on getting those behaviors taught that, it's okay to have our young ones around adults and individuals and teach that behavior. I don't remember many behavior techs and IAs being in kindergartens years ago. I mean, it's a fact that we have today, but it's an entire community. And I see it when we're in the schools. It's needed now, but those are things that I wish we didn't have to be facing. So I appreciate that you respect the data. There's not one thing in this presentation that I know you haven't gone over 100 times in your head and with your team, Ms. Dampier. So I know you're looking at those. I see the slide where, home ed in lieu of ALC. I mean, the black demographics over double from 15 to 34 that they've chosen that, and only 46 to 49 and the white demographic. So they are, some groups are taking advantage of that home ed instead of going to the ALC. And those are, when you hear we're putting them in ALC, I'm a big one on that. No, that's the consequence that they have chosen based on the actions that they've decided to take themselves. They've chosen that route. Just continue doing what you're doing, and giving the supports to the schools. I don't think there's a conversation that goes by you and I have that it isn't about putting more supports in the schools, giving the teachers, administrators, and those students everything. I know you're pouring your heart and soul into this, and we appreciate it. It isn't going to be turned around overnight. No, I'm not putting a demand that these numbers need to be reduced. Just keep doing what we're doing, and over time, I have faith and confidence that BPS is going to continue improving. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trent. All right, I get to wait patiently till everyone speaks at the end. And so thank you for continually diving into this data. I think you've said this a couple times, expectations. So unspoken expectations lead to disappointment. And so sometimes I think that's what we found with this. We weren't setting a clear expectation of what we expected from our students and what we expected from our staff. And now we're kind of all rowing in the same direction, which is very, very important. I look forward to the day where, I'm going to use your analogy. Sorry, don't be mad at me, Dr. Rendell. But I want Brevard County to be the Georgia. So everybody that drives on 995 knows when the second you hit Georgia, you stop speeding, because you know why? They write tickets and you get in trouble. And so I would like our schools to be the Georgia, so to speak, when it comes to discipline, that you know what the expectation is and you know how to behave in a classroom, because if you do not, there will be a consequence associated with that behavior, whatever that behavior is. I anticipate a day where we see the first quarter data being extremely high, because they're setting the expectation of saying, hey, we see a lot of referrals, and then we start to see it taper off because students now realize, hey, they're not going to allow this in the school, so I can't act this way, I can't do these things. I think that's the trend that we'll probably start to see. I hope that we start to see. One thing I would just say I recommend doing, and I think this has been an eye-opening tool that I've used when I tour my schools, and I know you guys are at the schools now, is I ask to see a few different classrooms. A lot of times they want to show you the shiny, nice classroom with everybody sitting really well, and I want to see the first-year teacher's classroom. I want to see your seasoned teacher's classroom. I want to see the classroom that's writing the most referrals, because a lot of times you can go in there and just kind of spectate what's happening and give some positive feedback on some ways we could maybe help that classroom, or take some of those model examples and implement them in other classrooms. So just one recommendation I'll throw out there to you guys when you go out there, just ask to see different stuff rather than maybe the classrooms that you get steered into, because a lot of times that's very, very eye-opening. Other than that, thank you for the work that you're putting in here. I want to continually have these conversations. It's important that we continually look at this and monitor this, and like you guys are doing, you're recognizing there's an issue here, we need to focus on this. And we have the human element. This will never be perfect. So quite frankly, we're dealing with children. Children push limits, that's what they do. So we will continue to have these conversations, I believe, for as long as we're in the business of working with children. So don't get discouraged when you're not seeing things that you want to see. It just figures, okay, well, hey, this is reflecting that we need to work or focus more in one specific area. So I won't continue on anymore with that, because I know we have another part of this presentation. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thank you so much. And I believe it's Ms. Cashion-Smith, are you doing the next section of this? Okay.
I have a follow-up. So
I'm going to step out to the restroom really fast.
want to just highlight one thing. So the part about the behavior tech in the elementary schools, not just being in our kindergarten classrooms, I appreciate you highlighting that, but I just want to bring to everyone's attention to the reality is when you have a grade level that's struggling so much, especially an initial grade like kindergarten, getting data for those students is so time consuming. And so it's really, really helpful to have that individual on that campus to be able to be in those kindergarten classrooms more often. So just acknowledging, yes, they're going to be there for everyone, but putting them there is really helpful for those struggling kindergarten classrooms. I think it's important that we speak about what was just presented honestly. To say we're excited that kids are getting to class more often, the data says the exact opposite. By the thousands, they've increased in the categories of tardy to class and tardy to school. So make sure you're reading the slides before you make statements publicly. And it's frustrating for me because I speak first, I'm called to speak first, and then I listen to everyone else speak, and for the first time, there's a benefit there. Not one other person addressed the exact same issue I've brought up time and time again. There is a blindness from this board to have conversations about the data that has been presented over and over again. I'm not necessarily speaking to you, Ms. Campbell, because you did brush over it really quickly, but what I'm talking about is there's excuses being made by the majority of this board over and over again, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating because there is a huge sector of our population of students that are being ignored. And to excuse away that children made choices, that's why they're in the ALC, absolutely, you're correct. But when you look at the data and those students are doing the same behaviors at a lesser rate than the other students that they're being compared to, that doesn't add up. That's a problem. It is our responsibility to identify the problem and to fix it. And the blindness is a problem for the board. And I appreciate the interrogation of Ms. Dampierre. Again, I said it before, it has nothing to do with Ms. Dampierre or the district staff and their initiatives and their acknowledgement of it. If the top of the line isn't acknowledging that problem, this isn't going to be rectified.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. You are.
Here, there's been some accusations that there's a large population center being ignored. Can you talk a little bit around some of your things that we have that have been addressing some of those? I think she's in reference to the risk ratios and stuff like that. Can you talk around how your actions of going to the schools, identifying some of the issues, what is the plan that we've engaged with to overcome some of the risk ratio problems that she kind of said that we were ignoring?
I think the way we have included the culture and climate and the SIN as a goal, we didn't have that goal as a part of the school improvement plan last year. And that the ownership of, okay, what are the school-wide expectations? They're going to work for about 80 to 85% of our students. That other 15%, what are some strategies and interventions that we're going to provide for those students to see, to make sure that that they're getting that resource or support that is needed? Because again, we want to make sure that our students are in school. But that's one of the things, is actually being able to look at that. It's also going to help with MTSS. We had a lot of processes and procedures in place that should have been updated a couple of years ago. And so what we did was we streamlined, we worked with CNI, and this was a collaboration effort when looking at how can we streamline the MTSS problem-solving process. We met several times to just as a cohesive unit, but then also once we had what's required, we eliminated some of those things and practices that were not required. And so that's going to streamline that resource so we can get to providing those resources and not doing it in isolation, to do it as looking at, why is this kid not in school? the MTSS process is going to look at attendance and behavior and academics, all of those things. Whereas before, we were doing it sometimes in isolation and sometimes with all of the paperwork that we were requiring them to do that really wasn't needed. We couldn't get to that intervention quickly enough. So that we've streamlined that. And we got a huge applause for the teachers that were there when we told them, hey, we're no longer doing this for certain parts of that MTSS process. So we're doing a lot of our paperwork and focus now, and we've streamlined. I went and pulled policy and legislative requirements and said, this is not required, so why are we doing it? So we eliminated a lot of things. So that's going to streamline.
And I appreciate that because every one of the schools that I went to go speak at, consistently, that was one of the top 3 issues was the MTSS process. And you and I talked about it, and you identified it. You were already on top of it by the time I brought it to you, so I applaud you for that. And what you had said earlier is that in regards to some of the risk ratios and some of the other issues that we have at each one of the schools, we've actually baked it into the school improvement plan to start identifying those factors so that culturally we can identify them also besides just the actions, and then holistically look at those individuals as a whole to support them instead of just saying, you're bad, here's some solutions. You're actually looking at it from a holistic perspective.
And it's part of your action steps. So, before we just had the academics, now we have academics and culture and climate. So you're going to be, you've put together a goal, you've put some action steps, and as a school, they're going to be monitoring that, and we will be monitoring as a district as well to see how we're making progress. And then again, that's where the problem solving, and then we go out and make sure that it supports and give them ideas, and we problem solve as a team. And we're going to do a lot more of that. And I'm streamlining also in my department, especially in the discipline area. We are going to be doing some things differently where Mr. Cristal can get out there more frequently to the schools, because that will be an expectations that, we're all going and providing that support and resource.
And I appreciate that because when you put it into a school improvement plan, it becomes part of your plan, not some sort of side piece. So I appreciate that you've put together a robust plan to deal with some of those higher areas, risk ratios, and stuff like that for next year. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, just one more bite at the apple here. I hear the concern, especially about the risk ratios. We get presented this every time, and they're showing not improving. I have seen enough of our data through the years. It's not included in this presentation to know that our highest risk ratio issue is free and reduced lunch. We also know that there is a higher occurrence of free and reduced lunch in our Black student population. That is true. And when we have, and our students with disabilities, sometimes we have a higher representation of students with disabilities in our Black population than we do our white population. I want us to be careful, because if what you just suggested a few minutes ago was that we have students committing the same offense and they're getting different outcomes. I haven't seen anything presented in this. For one thing, risk ratios, if I recall, only have to do with in-school and out-of-school suspensions, correct? They're not talking about all disciplines. And what we were presented with as far as the numbers of actions, the highest discipline codes, none of those are suspendable offenses unless they lead to something else. Willful disobedience, out of assigned area can be, depending on how egregious it was, but tardy to class, classroom disruptions, minor electronic misuse, those are not suspendable in school, out school. So if we're truly going to look and say, are we having our Black students, our students with disabilities, or free reduced lunch use, are they getting different outcomes for the same offense? Then that's egregious, and we need to take care of that. But that's not in this presentation. So I don't think anybody can look at this presentation and go, we're causing this. I hear the concern. Well, then we need to get down, because what are the offenses that are leading to that? Then if we want to get that specific data and go, okay, how many Black students have committed this offense, and what was the result? How many white students, or how many free and reduced lunch, how many non-free reduced lunch, how many students with disabilities, how many students who didn't have a disability? If we need that breakdown so we can get that clarity, part of this is just a snapshot, and part of the risk ratio conversation and the, I'm going to get the initials wrong, but CEI, there's
CEIS.
that, or there's extra S's. I always want to add, mix up the letters. That process, you guys are going school to school, and risk ratios that are extreme, the most extreme, you are coming in and helping them problem solve, correct?
Yes, we have to, the DOE gives us a list of course, while we're on the list, and then we determine which schools are contributing to that high percentage, and then we're bound to provide 15% set aside of support and resources to those schools. And the support that I'm talking about, my team going, that is above and beyond the CCEIS that's
Right.
running within itself. So that's, and remember, that's lagging data. It's not leading. Yes, that is something that we're required. We haven't gotten the update for this coming school year yet, but yes, we are required to set aside that 15%.
And as part of those conversations, are you guys looking at that specific granular level of data where you're looking at, are there different punishments being doled out for the same crime?
As far as the CCEIS schools, yes, we are looking at, and we will be able to do a better job now that we have the dashboards. Because I'm just going to be honest with you, pulling the data, we only pulled it once a month because it is very tedious. So we're looking at, I think we would pull it on the 15th of every month, all these different reports. And then from there, look at it. Now that we'll have dashboards available come August, September, we'll be able to pull it at our fingertips and do some more in-depth data. And that's where Mr. Cristal, he comes with that background from Hillsborough County, and he'll be able to help us problem solve as well as some additional strategies. We've already been talking last week about, and we said, we'll wait till next year, because we're going to be putting those interventions and strategies in place to monitor that.
So my point is, it's not being ignored.
No.
It's not being ignored. And that data is probably some data that if there are significant discrepancies, that's probably some data specifically that we need to look at, because I don't want to make just broad statements without being able to know exactly what we're talking about.
All right.
I need to clarify that.
We are, just so that we're aware, we're at 11:58 right now, and so we're going to need to either take a break, because we still have another agenda item, and then we still have the second half of this presentation, which is the bullying data. So, Ms. Jenkins, if we'll go ahead and finish with your last statement.
Yeah,
and then we'll
I need to
continue on.
clarify that.
Go
So
ahead.
when meeting with RSM, we had this conversation in a one-on-one setting, and they were uncomfortable to present certain information publicly. So I'm not making broad statements, Ms. Campbell, and that may not have been said to you or presented to you. But that was made very clear to me. I have asked for this data time and time again. We have mildly been presented this data in the past, not in this exact presentation, but other presentations. Each of some of these top 5, whatever, I don't know if it was 5, 10 categories were broken down. I have been asking for this data for a very, very, very long time. So it is not a broad sweeping statement. It is a statement I have asked for the information over and over again. And when I say that it's being ignored for the third time, it is being ignored by the majority of this board. So I appreciate you asking for that data so that I am not the only one asking for it, because it is important information for us to have. And it was brought up by RSM way back in the day, and we haven't done anything about it. I made an assumption that that same statement was made to the majority of our board members. I don't know why it wouldn't have been. But it was an in-depth conversation I had with RSM, and it wasn't presented when they came back with their findings. The findings had nothing to do with that. It had to do with process. And that bothered me, but clearly we weren't comfortable having that conversation publicly. I'm comfortable having it, because identifying the bad things means we can work towards progress and positive. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the bullying and Title IX updates, if that's okay. All right, Ms. Cashin-Smith, you have the floor.
All right. So we're just going to go through this data like we have in the previous, or I went too far here, in the previous session. So We're going to compare last year's to this year's, and we know that we have seen an increase in our bullying data, both substantiated and unsubstantiated cases. Our substantiated cases are up 24%. That number has come down some. In the second quarter, we were 52% above where we were last year. So each quarter, it has sort of leveled out a little bit, which is good. That we didn't, continue at that pace. That was, making me a little bit nervous. And then our unsubstantiated cases, which we know is really bogging our principals and administrators down in these investigations, are 45% higher, which they were last quarter 58% higher, and the quarter before that 56% higher. So that leveled off a little bit as well. But again, that's a lot of extra time that is taking our administrators from the main work, which is academics. So, and I'm going to talk about next steps at the end for both. So, looking at our Title IX cases, total we had 27 this year, and I am happy to say that right now we only have 6 cases still open. If you remember, I think we had 25 from the previous year when I started, and so we're going into the summer in a much better place than we were even in the fall of last year. You can't always have them all wrapped up because, a lot of them take a minimum of 60 days. And so it just takes time with all of the different steps that are in this process. It's a very, very intense process. We do have 2 cases that are open with labor relations, one that is still open from last school year and one from this school year. So that's a total of 8 cases that are currently open. And you can see the breakdown of how the 27 cases have ended up with. Right now we have 5 that are still in investigative progress, and 1 is with a decision maker. We had 5 that went to informal resolution, which is great. That means both parties agreed to resolve it a certain way. We had 6 that were dismissed, 3 that were substantiated, 7 that were unsubstantiated. So our next steps, right now we are working really hard on building training videos. And we are building these videos for bullying for our staff, our students, and our parents this year, which is an exciting addition. We know that we've got to really get the definition of what bullying actually is to our families and our students. And so we decided to do this by making videos that we can put on our website, that we can share out on social media, really like going over, the difference between conflict and bullying. And I know that we've talked about this in some of the previous updates, but we are right in the middle of making these videos, and they're the one for the parents is short and sweet, but it gets that information to them, and I think that's really important. For our administrators, we're building more in-depth training, and we're doing this through a Canvas course where they will actually have to answer questions throughout the module, so we know that they're really understanding what is being asked of them when they're conducting the investigations. We are also going to implement a new case management process, which should really help with that record-keeping piece that came up earlier and keeping us in compliance. Both of these have specific statute and law that is required in them, and it's hard to manage that across all of the different schools. So having something where it's very visible for the staff and for us to kind of keep track of those steps and how many days each thing's been at each step, and all of the templates built out right in those steps, which is going to be very helpful. We want to focus on prevention. And I talked last time about how we have Ms. Elam, who is really our prevention person for bullying, and she spends a lot of her time managing the investigation packets. And so our goal is to really free her up through this new case management process to get her out in the schools more, to be able to do the prevention and that side-by-side coaching with our administrative teams that are maybe struggling through some of these investigations. So, seeing where we see that they need a little bit more support, her being able to go out and walk through these investigations with them. And then we are working on updating our website with resources for teachers and for our families and students. So we had our site up and going and it disappeared yesterday, so we're not quite sure what happened, but it's gonna get back up there. Yes. So it looks more appealing and it's got links, a link that goes to the stopbullying.gov site that's full of a lot of resources, and our goal is to put that parent video up there for them to also see it there. So just some of those exciting things. And then with Title IX, we're also working on the training videos. And the nice thing about those training videos is even like for our administrators, they go through this course, but then when they're finished with the course, it will automatically open up to some resources where they can just watch the videos without having to go through the questions again. So they can just refer back to it. And when we get a new administrator or someone switches roles, they can just be assigned to the course and they have access to it. So it became a difficult management process to really get them all in here to train. And so our goal is to have them do these courses and then do some of those Q&A sessions with them on Teams where they can ask questions that they still have. And, go out and support them side by side if that is something that they really need. We're also we're going to implement the same case management software with this process as well, which is going to be a huge game changer with the Title IX. And we're revising the flow chart. We just saw some areas where we could improve, where certain things were happening. And our goal is to eventually have some short little videos that just walk through each, like you're in this stage of this flow chart, you can click on a link and it'll just show you like a little tutorial for just that section. And adding when they pass the case on from the investigator to the decision maker, that there is a mandatory meeting that happens with our Title IX coordinator just to make sure that they have everything they need, they understand what their steps are, and they are prepared to move forward. And then updating our website there as well.
Thank you. All right, board, do you have anything to weigh in on the Title IX data that was presented?
That point of handoff where they're meeting with the Title IX coordinator, is that with the district Title IX
Yes,
coordinator? Okay.
it is.
You're good? All right, yeah, thank you. I'm glad about the videos. I think that's going to be tremendous, honestly. The the unsubstantiated tongue twister cases obviously is alarming, so if we can get those numbers down, that will free up a lot of time, so
Yes.
very much excited to see those
We've also
videos.
worked on some graphics that are really visually appealing, that have the definition,
Right.
on there, and really helping students and families to understand that cyberbullying is also part of the bullying definition, and you get to that repeated level very quickly when it's online, and just some of those implications. And our code of conduct merged that together this year so that we're really aligned with the assessor, and it's all just improving.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. All right, board, we are now at 12:10. We have one more item that we were going to cover today, and I don't know who's presenting on this one, with the policy updates?
Yeah, basically, Paul was going to review it. It's just a policy update and the policy regarding professional development,
Okay,
and it's just to get it in line with Neola.
okay, and so I think we're probably good to go ahead and cover that before we take a short recess for maybe lunch, and then we'll reconvene after that. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll move on to the next topic, which is the policy revisions for the board review, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Gibbs, if you want to run through what you have for us.
Yeah, on
Thank
the on your agenda item, there's a summary and a red line version No.
Okay.
And I mean, I can put them up there. I think Lena added them to the thing if you want them on the screen. But
No, I mean, we have it right
yeah.
here in front of us.
So the summaries, as you'll note, 3 of the 4 are pretty much just Neola. The 4th is also Neola.
Okay.
There is one typo where it lists the 3 policies. We obviously don't have a 4,000 set of policies at all, so we corrected that red line and struck the 2 policies that we don't currently have on the books.
Okay.
The rest are all in line with Neola, so as long as you are good with it and have no questions, we're good to move forward. The staff thought that these were needed to update prior to the next big update coming in the fall.
Okay. All right. Thank you, board. Do you have anything to weigh in on any of these policies or any issues or questions? None? All right. None. All right. So then that,
So yeah, these will come back at the July workshop for
Okay.
first public hearing, and then July 30 for final approval.
all right, perfect. All right, the last topic that we have is the general counsel's evaluation review for the 23-24 year. The board will finish the workshop business in the superintendent's conference room with the general counsel's evaluation, and we'll adjourn the meeting upon the conclusion of the evaluation. We're going to take a short recess, though, so board, can we agree to meet back into the superintendent's conference room at 1 o'clock? Is that fair, or that's?
Well, I mean, we can have an eating meeting if you don't.
If you want to have an eating meeting, okay. All right, 12:30 then? That's probably not enough time, so let's split the difference. 12:45, let's meet in the superintendent's office, conference room, sorry, at 12:45, and we'll reconvene the meeting from there and carry on. All right? Everyone good? Yep. All right, we'll see you there. Thank you.